Chapter 91. Bang! With a loud noise, Feng Qi kicked open the iron door of room 004. After his physical strength was increased, he only needed one kick to break open the iron door that used to take several kicks to break open. He walked through the smoke and dust, stepped into the room, and pressed the light button on the right wall. After a flash, the view in front of him suddenly opened up. There were several assembly line machines in this room. All the machines were connected. There was also a transport track installed above the room, but the surface of all the machines was covered with rust. He came to the end of the assembly line machine, climbed up the ladder to a metal box more than 3 meters high, and opened the metal lid with force. An unpleasant smell hit him in the face. Looking down, he saw a thick layer of brown, transparent solid at the bottom of the box. What the hell is this? This is obviously a room for processing food. The track above is connected to the residents' rooms, and there is a daily quota of food. Compared to your era, the residents living in the apocalypse are lucky to have enough to eat. It is impossible to eat well unless it is a special festival. Usually, they can only eat this kind of nutrition cream. Hearing the narrator's explanation, he felt uncomfortable. Suddenly, he remembered the letters his classmates left in the time capsule when they graduated. While they were looking forward to the glorious event, they were also envious of the people living in the future, thinking that they would be happy. Maybe they would never see that day come, but they still chose to work hard for the arrival of that day. But if they knew that the future they were fighting for would be like this, how desperate would they be? Seeing the truth will make you realize how imperfect this world is. You will find that there are many regrets that need to be made up, but you can rewrite everything to make up for the regrets and make it perfect. Narrator, you are so mushy, I have goosebumps. Haha. Feng Qi was speechless. Jumping down the metal ladder, he stepped out of the room. Having said that, he actually agreed with the narrator's words. He would always look forward to the future and believe that a surprise would come one day. When he came to room 005, he took 2 steps back, then took a big step forward and kicked forward. After a loud noise, the iron door fell down. He stepped into the room and turned on the light switch. The scene that appeared in front of him stunned him. The place was filled with all kinds of cold weapons. Sabers, swords, spears, staffs, halberds, all kinds of weapons were neatly placed against the wall. Furthermore, the weapons here did not rust under the baptism of time. They were still shining coldly under the light. Feng Qi was not surprised by this. In a modern world, many domain warriors' weapons would not oxidize. This was because their weapons were made from special ores produced in the domain, which had extremely strong corrosion resistance and toughness. Standing in front of a battle axe, he reached out and grabbed the handle. Suddenly, a layer of pale red light appeared on the surface of the battle axe. Seeing this layer of faint red light, he knew that the spirit ore used to forge this weapon was of extremely high quality. Only a few extremely precious spirit ores could automatically absorb the spirit qi of heaven and earth. Cultivators used up the spirit qi stored in their bodies during battle. With this kind of weapon, it was equivalent to having an extra blue bar. Moreover, this blue bar would automatically absorb spirit qi to replenish it. After waving the battle axe twice, there was a sharp sound of wind breaking. However, he still felt that the battle axe was not very convenient to use. The bone staff is your life weapon. In the future, if you want to forge a weapon in reality, forge it according to the bone staff. You definitely won't be able to use any other weapon. Feng Qi was speechless. He wanted to refute, but he felt that the narrator was right. He was used to using the bone staff. Other weapons were not very convenient to use. The suction cup was an exception. It was a fully automatic combat weapon. He only needed to throw it out. He did not need to personally control it in battle. After walking around the room, he tried using other weapons. However, after waving them around, he felt that they were not as convenient as the bone staff. Just as he was about to leave, he found a scroll placed in the corner of the room. He went to the corner and picked up the scroll. He did not know what material the scroll was made of. It was not corroded by time. It felt soft to the touch, like it was made of some kind of animal skin. There was also fine white fur on the surface. He went to the center of the room, squatted on the ground, and slowly spread out the scroll. The scroll was about 2.5 meters long and half a meter wide. It was a landscape painting of mountains and rivers. In the center of the painting were 3 gilded words, "Sky Painting." Upon closer inspection, he could see that there were many strange figures hidden in the painting. Above a mountain on the left of the painting, lightning flashed and thunder roared. However, upon closer inspection, he could see that a green face with fangs was faintly discernible in the crisscrossing lightning. There was a huge lake at the bottom left corner of the painting. There was a huge black shadow swimming under the lake, causing waves on the surface of the lake. There were many other hidden figures. It looked like a landscape painting, but in fact, there were many strange things hidden in the painting. And the 3 big words in the center of the painting made him involuntarily think of the heavenly path that Liu mentioned. Narrator, come out and explain. I think the big fish in this lake should be enough to feed Mu Qing for a few days. Feng Qi was speechless. As the veins on his forehead throbbed, he could not help but ask again. What I'm asking is, do you know the origin of this painting? Or what kind of information can you glean from the painting? Then you're asking the wrong person. I'm just as confused as you are. After hearing the narrator's answer, he looked at the painting again. Upon closer inspection, he found that the upper right corner of the painting was marked with an inconspicuous pattern that blended with the painting's background color. This pattern was like a snake with its head and tail connected. As for the meaning of this pattern, he could not see it. Have you seen martial arts movies? Usually, if you can't see through it, you can burn it with fire. Maybe there's a peerless technique hidden in it that can make you invincible. Feng Qi was speechless. He did not know if the narrator was hinting at him or fooling him. Therefore, he immediately walked out of the room with the scroll and went to the food processing assembly line next door. As he looked around, he came to the main control panel and pressed the red button on it. After the machine shook for a while, the entire processing assembly line began to operate. The robotic arm in the center of the assembly line began to grasp the air and entered the food processing stage. In one of the machines used for incineration, a raging flame ignited. Seeing this, Feng Qi immediately went to the machine and threw the scroll in. After a while, he looked at the scroll that was not damaged at all in the flames with a blank expression. Why don't you change your approach and try watering it? If you spray it with a gun, maybe some important information will appear on it. Feng Qi was speechless. Sorry, I forgot you didn't bring a gun. It's my fault. I definitely didn't mean to cause trouble. I'd be a fool to believe you. He turned off the machine and took out the scroll. This scroll was made of an unknown material. Not only did it withstand the burning of the flames, it did not even have the slightest bit of heat. He tried to tear it with force, but he found that he could not tear the scroll open with his strength. After he used his strength again, he threw the scroll down and walked out of the room. Since he could not figure it out, he could only choose to give up. Not only was it meaningless to continue, but it was also a waste of precious time. Every time he entered the future dream, he planned for himself to explore the 3 rooms and look for useful information. After leaving this room, he went to the 3rd room, which was room 006. After violently kicking the door open, he walked in and turned on the light switch in the room. The scene that appeared in front of him shocked him. After a closer look, he found that the room was filled with specimens of the domain creatures. They were placed in lifelike shapes. In front of each specimen was a metal sign. The words on it had been corroded and could no longer be read clearly. After glancing around, he left the room. This time, when he opened the room blind box, except for the sky painting scroll that might have hidden information, he did not find any meaningful content in the other 2 rooms. After leaving the domain creature specimen room, he went straight to the database console. At this time, there were muffled sounds of fighting above his head. It was obvious that the suction cup and Xiao He had come to the top of the shelter during the battle. However, by the time he reached the control panel of the database, the sounds of fighting had disappeared again. In this regard, he could only cheer for the suction cup in his heart. As for helping, it was impossible. With his current strength, he could not even last 1 round against Xiao He. If he rushed up, it would not be called helping. It would be called delivering his head. Correction, it's a dog's head. You talk too much. Opening the library of techniques in the database, he began to choose the cultivation techniques that he needed to memorize this time. After looking through the introductions of more than 10 cultivation methods, he picked a 2-star body cultivation method called extreme hardness and ferocity. After clicking confirm, a dignified man in an instructor's uniform appeared in the video. He also entered a learning state. At this moment, he did not pay attention to the outside world and only focused on reading. He, who was always full of motivation to learn, began to swim in the sea of knowledge. Freestyle, backstroke, butterfly, breaststroke, and dog paddle. Shut up. After an unknown amount of time, Feng Qi, who had watched the video twice and memorized the teaching content, came back to his senses. At this time, the battle between the suction cup and Xiao He was still ongoing. Therefore, he clicked on the technique research teaching video and continued to learn. However, after watching it twice, Xiao He still did not appear. This was obviously related to the increase in the suction cup strength. He felt that the suction cup might be able to defeat Xiao He this time, allowing him to escape from Xiao He's pursuit. Even if the probability was small, he still had hope. What should he do next? After pondering for a moment, he decided to search for biological science content to study. The next time he entered the future dream, if he chose to go undercover in the Scarlet Institute, then biological science knowledge would be very important. This was related to whether he could get a promotion in the Scarlet Institute and access the core secrets of the Scarlet Institute. Therefore, he began to search for breakthrough research results in the biological science field in the database. In the search, a title attracted his attention. Is the development of rune-modified humans good or bad? Let's analyze it in depth. Seeing this title, he immediately thought of Mu Qing and the Rune-Modified Humans project that Mu Qing restarted when she established Dawn. He knew very little about Rune-Modified Humans, so he clicked on the title and began to read the details. Chapter 92, Star City Sanctuary, in front of the control panel of the database. Feng Qi stared at the interpretation of Rune-Modified Humans on the big screen in front of him and fell into deep thought. His understanding of Rune-Modified Humans first came from Lao Wang's history class. In the early days of the Rune-Modified Humans project, mankind's exploration of cultivation was still in its infancy. Someone had just proposed the concept of channeling the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into the body. During the period of dissection and exploration of the body structure of domain creatures, researchers discovered that the rune crystals embedded in the bodies of domain creatures contained a huge amount of power. Therefore, someone hypothesized that if the rune crystals could be embedded in the human body, humans would also be able to obtain terrifying strength comparable to domain creatures. Thus, the Rune-Modified Humans project was officially established. At that time, this research school overwhelmed cultivation studies and became the mainstream research direction of society at that time. However, the drawbacks quickly became apparent. Those humans who were implanted with the rune crystals did indeed obtain great strength in a short period of time. They could even rely on the rune crystals to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to strengthen themselves. However, the rune crystals came from a different domain species after all, and were not perfectly compatible with the human body. The first batch of people who participated in the experiment began to experience rejection reactions one after another. Some even went insane, and their temperament changed drastically. Gradually, they went out of control, causing a lot of safety risks. As for where the problem was, there was no way to find the reason. The serious potential risks caused the Rune-Modified Humans project to reach a bottleneck, and it gradually withdrew from the mainstream stage of history. In the future, safe and reliable cultivation studies began to emerge, and eventually became the mainstream school of thought. During this period, it continued to expand into new fields, forming modern martial arts studies, magic studies, physical cultivation studies, rune array studies, spiritual healing studies, and other research schools. As for the Rune-Modified Humans project, it was buried in history. Occasionally, he would hear about it in history classes, but it was only briefly mentioned and not talked about in detail. However, what puzzled Feng Qi was why the Scarlet Institute was still carrying out the Rune-Modified Humans project. Why did Mu Qing, who established Dawn in the future history, restart the rune-modified humans project? Were there some secrets hidden in it that had not been revealed? The interpretation of the rune-modified humans on the screen allowed him to understand part of the truth. The article first described the strength level of domain creatures in detail. From low to high, it was divided into 5 levels: Yin, evil, Qi, Zhuyin, and chaos. Each rank was further divided into low, middle, and high. Every increase in one's strength was equivalent to a leap in one's life and strength. Based on the available information, Chaos-class domain creatures were only hypothetical concepts. They had never been discovered before, but Chaos-class domain creatures did exist in reality. It was located in the middle of the sea, descending together with the domain. Part of its body was illusory, while the other part formed an island in the sea. Along with the expansion of the domain, this terrifying creature was gradually revealing itself. Every time it moved, monstrous waves would be created on the surface of the sea. This terrifying Judas domain creature was currently in a deep slumber and had yet to wreak havoc on human civilization. However, its existence was like an explosive that could be detonated at any time. Once it was activated, it would definitely set off a terrifying disaster. Among them, there was no lack of special species with intelligence. For example, the sheep-headed demons that he had encountered before were clearly an intelligent domain race. Ordinary domain creatures would not leave their territory field. Once they left their territory field, they would be like fish out of water, unable to adapt to the natural environment outside. However, the situation was completely different for intelligent domain creatures. They were also known as domain transcendent creatures. They would often appear outside the territory field to hunt humans. They were the most troublesome enemies for humans. As for how to adapt to the natural environment outside the territory field, domain transcendent creatures had their own methods. Just like how humans created diving equipment, they could also use the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to create rune crystals in their bodies to adapt to the natural environment outside. Because of their intelligence, they knew that humans were a stumbling block to the expansion of their territory field. Therefore, they had never stopped destroying human development. For example, large-scale destruction would occur from time to time. In this explanation of rune-modified humans, other than describing the hidden dangers that existed when the rune crystals were combined with the human body, it also explained in detail the advantages that it could bring. One of the advantages was that it could strengthen a person's physical fitness. For example, after an ordinary person was successfully implanted with a rune crystal, their body strength would be increased in a short period of time. For example, when cold water met hot water, the temperature would be adjusted. Similarly, after a human was implanted with a rune crystal, the power within the rune crystal would automatically adjust the body's strength and increase it. After eliminating the hidden dangers, compared to cultivation, which required a long period of accumulation, embedding a rune crystal was undoubtedly a shortcut to increasing one's strength. Other than that, the biggest advantage of embedding a rune crystal was that it could allow the implanter to obtain the natural abilities of the domain creatures. For example, the ability to control nature, the ability to control objects with telekinesis, the ability to metallize the body, and so on. The best example was Mu Qing. As the only human who had perfectly fused with a rune crystal, she had inherited the ability of the unknown domain creatures to grow by devouring. As long as there was food, she could grow without limit. The article also gave its own speculation about the rune crystal embedded in Mu Qing's body. The author of the article felt that the rune crystal embedded in Mu Qing's body was most likely obtained from a Judas domain creature. This was why Mu Qing had such a terrifying growth talent. However, this was only his speculation and could not provide any detailed supporting information. After reading this article, Feng Qi understood 2 key pieces of information: growth shortcuts and natural abilities. After eliminating the hidden dangers, the Rune Transformation Project was the easiest way to obtain powerful strength. Was there such a possibility? Mu Qing restarted the Rune Transformation Project, because she urgently wanted to create a powerful army to fight against the unknown hidden forces. She no longer cared about the potential risks of the Rune Transformation Project. There was no way to know about this for the time being. He decided to leave his email to Mu Qing next time and let Mu Qing answer his questions. He closed the explanation of the Rune Transformation Project and began to search for knowledge in the field of biological science. If the next future timeline chose to go undercover at the Scarlet Institute, then this information would help him infiltrate the Scarlet Institute's core circle. While searching, he found a piece of information about limb regeneration. This information described the research direction and results of using genetic technology to complete the regeneration of human body parts. The main inspiration came from salamanders. They could regenerate their limbs after they were cut off, but humans did not have the ability to regenerate limbs. This information immediately piqued Feng Qi's interest. If limbs could be regenerated, it would definitely help human civilization fight against the expansion of the domain. In the real world, there were a large number of practitioners who were seriously injured in the domain every year. They had no choice but to retire. If there was a mature limb regeneration technology, then this problem could be solved. The personal safety of domain warriors could also be relatively guaranteed. If they lost a hand, they could grow a new hand. If they lost a leg, they could grow a new leg. There was a special enzyme in the salamander's body that could regenerate its limbs and organs. According to the data, the scientists believed that by synthesizing this enzyme artificially, there was a chance that people who had lost their limbs and organs could grow new limbs and organs. During this period, the researchers conducted tests on human skin. The results showed that wounds did indeed heal faster, and the speed of skin regeneration was also faster than before. The technology and the information was still in the semi-mature stage, but for Feng Qi, this was enough. With the future database in hand, he could definitely accumulate and advance this research technology. If once was not enough, he could do it twice. Every time, he would use the future technology as a starting point and develop it for 1,500 years. This technology would definitely be perfected. However, because the information was too long, it was very difficult for him to memorize it. After reading the opening chapter, he read it again and suddenly felt that his brain cells were not enough. There were a lot of technical terms and nouns in the book, which confused him. However, he still decided to memorize all this information first. When he returned to the real world, he would read the relevant information to understand the details. A journey of 1,000 miles began with a single step. He could only slowly understand the knowledge in the unknown field. He could not eat until he was fat. I suddenly feel that you have to learn everything now. If you have unlimited memory, then wouldn't you become a super genius in all fields? When he heard this, he could not help but be stunned. Thinking about it carefully, the situation seemed to be exactly as the narration said. Cultivation, mechanical technology, biological science, there might be many new systems that he needed to learn in the future waiting for him to understand. However, at this stage, he was most focused on the development of cultivation. The reason he studied martial arts and knowledge was to build a foundation for human cultivation. Every time he brought back a new cultivation technique, it would promote the improvement and perfection of the cultivation technique. If it were not for the fact that cultivation techniques that were 3-star and above were restricted, he would have stared at a cultivation technique and copied it to perfect it into a god-level cultivation technique. For example, he could use 1,500 years of stacking to make it infinitely close to perfection. After he finished reading the opening chapter of Limb Regeneration, the battle between the sucker and Xiaohe was still ongoing. He decided to read the information of the super geniuses of the same era. They were all pioneers of the era and would also contribute to the growth of human civilization. They were the key points that he needed to pay attention to. He also looked at the information of the dispelled field. In his eyes, this information was all strategies and secrets for clearing the field. Mastering this information would help him develop and dispel fields in the future. Before that, he was curious and decided to go to the surface to take a look at the battle between the sucker and Xiaohe. Perhaps this time, the sucker had already killed Xiaohe. Thinking about this, He immediately turned around and walked toward the metal tunnel. A moment later, his figure appeared outside the shelter. Looking around, he quickly found the figure of the sucker and Xiaohei. Their battle was still ongoing. Xiaohei, who had transformed into a black fog, was like a black hole. Everything in his path was devoured. Only the powerful body of the sucker could withstand it. Narration: If I kill Xiaohei, do you think I can become almost immortal? Hitue. Feng Qi was speechless. Chapter 93. After taking a look at the situation between the suction cup and Xiaohei, Feng Qi returned to the underground shelter through the metal tunnel. In his opinion, the way Xiaohei and the suction cup fought were two completely different styles. The suction cup was the kind of melee combat type that could resist and attack at the same time, and its physical damage was off the charts. For other domain creatures, the suction cup was a killing machine. It basically couldn't withstand one of her melee punches. If that didn't work, then 2 punches would be enough. However, in front of Xiaohei, the suction cup's ability was perfectly countered. As long as Xiaohei turned his body into mist, no matter how the suction cup punched, it wouldn't be able to do any damage to him. This was what puzzled Feng Qi the most. Logically speaking, when one's physical strength reached the level of the suction cup, even the wind from the punch would be able to disperse the black mist. It was no longer purely physical damage, but also magical damage. However, the reality was that even if Xiaohei's atomized body was scattered by the wind from the punch, and the atomized structure was destroyed, part of his body that was blown far away would quickly float back and heal. It was as if there was some kind of force that was guiding every mist particle, causing them to reassemble into a whole. However, logically speaking, as long as the original structure of any aggregation was destroyed, the parts that were detached from the aggregation would lose their connection to the main body. For example, the human body was made up of tiny unit cells. If a person's skin was scraped, although it would regenerate, the missing piece of skin would be considered detached from the body and no longer be a part of the aggregation. Xiaohei's situation was completely different. Every mist particle on his body seemed to have a life of its own. Even if they were far away from his body, they would still be attracted back to the aggregation to become a part of it. This aggregation of life reminded him of ants and bees. Ants and bees were discrete aggregations of life. They could only survive as a whole unit in nature. However, even ants and bees would not be able to survive if a single unit left the group. It was just like how human cells could not survive for a long time without a human body. Xiaohei's situation was completely different. Part of his body was fighting the suction cup, while the other part of his body that was scattered by the wind from the punch even took a detour to eat a living dead on the way back before returning to the battle. It was as if the part that had been separated from the body had developed its own consciousness and was able to think independently. What the hell is Xiaohei? This is too strange. Have you watched the Terminator movies? Xiaohei is like the Terminator sent by the future to deal with you. He has locked onto you precisely and then erased you, the source that could change history. Then why don't you kill me in the real world? How would I know? It was just a metaphor. I didn't say for sure. Besides, the possibility of Xiaohei coming from the future is close to zero. Don't forget that you saw a picture of Xiaohei in the research room of the shelter. It means that he already existed before you traveled through time. After listening to the narrator's explanation, Feng Qi fell into deep thought. Since Xiaohei had already existed before he transmigrated here, why would he be able to accurately pinpoint his location and hunt him down? In the world 1,500 years later, the traces of his existence had almost been completely erased. Only some traces of his existence could be found in historical documents. Therefore, Xiaohei's hunt was very strange. Since he couldn't figure out the reason, he stopped thinking about it. He believed that one day he would get the answer to all his questions and the truth. Coming to the database console, he clicked on the search box, then filtered the year and narrowed the range to within Star City. He began to check the information of the geniuses of the same era. In the future, when he established the Domain Battle Group, the Breaking Dawn organization, and other forces, these geniuses would be potential forces that could be recruited. Feng-Chi felt that it might be easier for him to improve his strength in the real world than in the future dream. His special physique made it impossible for him to absorb aura to cultivate, but he gained the ability to kill domain creatures and plunder their blood and talents. In the future dream, he could only fight alone. Moreover, it was very dangerous here. Even with the suction cups protecting him, he might not be safe. In addition to Xiaohei, there must be creatures stronger than the suction cups in the future dream. The winged behemoth that streaked across the sky last time, and the mountain-like figure in the area surrounded by dark clouds in the west of the shelter were good examples. Exploring other directions in the future would also be difficult, and death would follow him like a shadow. But it was completely different in the real world. He could form a domain battle group and explore the domain with Lu Yu, Lin Ran, and the others. While hunting domain creatures, he could let them give him the last chance to deal the final blow. It was equivalent to a group battle, and he could enjoy the experience alone. The efficiency of this method of becoming stronger was obviously higher than in the future dream. Of course, the premise of this assumption was that he could also gain strength from hunting domain creatures in the real world, just like in the future dream. If this method worked, the plan to explore the domain battle group could be put on the agenda. At the same time, he could also find all kinds of rare spiritual plants and special products that contained aura in the domain battle group to help the team grow and improve their strength. The resources produced by the domain battle group would also be the source of funds for him to develop Savior in the future, as well as to supplement the cost of entering the future dream. Most importantly, with the secret manual, he might be able to use the interpretation provided by the people in the future to remove the domain battle group in the simplest and most efficient way. This would have a far-reaching impact on the future of mankind. The domain battle group in the real world was expanding, and new domains would appear from time to time. The living space of mankind was constantly shrinking. This also caused the extraction of resources to become a problem. For example, about 800 kilometers to the north of Star City, there was originally a large mine that produced iron ore. But now that the area was covered by the domain battle group, this caused mankind to lose a place to collect resources, which affected the production of steel. In addition, after the domain battle group was dispelled, the special spiritual materials that appeared with the domain battle group would not disappear, which would also be a rich source of income. Therefore, talents were very important, and every step of the plan in the future required talents to join. In the future dream, he had no choice but to fight alone. But in the real world, he could not follow the foolish path of individual heroism. He had to integrate all the resources around him. He planned to temporarily lock the search area in Star City, starting from Star City to gather the talents of the same generation, and then gradually expand outwards. Does this count as the rabbit eating the grass near its nest? This is called the pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first. I can see that you haven't studied for many years. You're uncultured. A son doesn't despise his father for being ugly, and a dog doesn't despise his family for being poor. You're both hetue. Feng-Chi was speechless. Because he did not have the permission to look up the information of people, he could only learn the details through historical articles in the database. In the search, a title caught his attention. He felt that the name in the title was somewhat familiar, but he could not remember where he had seen it. So he clicked on the title and began to read the details. Shashin, on the road from ordinary to genius. Some people become braver with setbacks and never admit defeat. Content, speaking of Shashin, I think everyone must feel a little unfamiliar. However, she was definitely one of the geniuses with the most potential in the research of cultivation methods in the 21st century. She had developed a total of 12 cultivation methods in her lifetime, including 1 4-star cultivation method, 3 3-star cultivation methods, 4 2-star cultivation methods, and 4 1-star cultivation methods. The 1-star cultivation methods were basically developed in the early stages. Even if her talent in cultivation method research was not the strongest in her generation, she was still one of the most outstanding people of her generation. However, such a talented person had lived in the shadow of another person in his early days. Everyone must be very familiar with that person. He is Feng-Chi. In the early years, they were in different classes at Star City. First High School. Presumably, everyone knows about Feng Qi. If you don't mention anything else, just based on his talent in cultivation method research, he could be ranked in the top 10 in history, or even the top 3 in history. Although Feng Qi had not yet shown his terrifying talent when he was studying at Star City First High School, he was still one of the best among his peers. He always occupied the first place in Star City First High School. But Shashin, who had just entered Star City First High School, did not stand at the top like Feng Qi. She was like a fighter, constantly challenging the students with good grades. Step by step, she surpassed them. She climbed from the 300th place to the 2nd place in the grade. And her final opponent was Feng Qi. But reality was cruel. In front of Feng Qi, she experienced failure again and again. It was said that the closest she came to success was during the graduation exam. At that time, Shashin's results in all aspects were predicted to be better than Feng Qi's. P.S. The data at that time was calculated by Star City's Ministry of Education. It was not made up by me. The result was very sad. Feng Qi did not participate in the exam. Instead, he was directly admitted to Star City University. In this way, Shashin failed when she was the closest to success. Thus, the two of them embarked on 2 completely different paths. Feng Qi became the new star of the era that Shashin could only look up to, and the gap between them was getting bigger and bigger. Do you think Shashin will give up? Wrong. Not only did she not give up, but she also worked hard under this pressure. The more setbacks she faced, the braver she became. Here is a quote that Shashin said to her teacher in her early days. "My talent is very ordinary, but I also want to be like Feng Qi and work hard for the arrival of a brilliant era. So, I, who have no talent, can only do my best to catch up. His strength is also my motivation to constantly improve." However, after Feng Qi was executed, Shashin's life also ushered in a Waterloo. She could not believe that this opponent, who was always optimistic in her eyes, was a traitor to humanity. Thus, the motivation in her heart to constantly improve disappeared. A talent of the era who originally had unlimited potential and had already developed a 4-star technique at the age of 26 dimmed when her talent was on the rise. Feng Qi's strength led to her strength, and Feng Qi's death also caused the motivation in her heart to dry up. It could be said that she was an alternative genius who constantly challenged herself under Feng Qi's shadow and grew rapidly. Netizens' comments: "Yi sure won. The original poster is talking nonsense." Although I don't want to admit it, Feng Qi's talent in the research of techniques is extremely rare in history. Although there was a period of silence, his potential was definitely not lost. It's just that he didn't have the heart to develop techniques and was thinking about how to destroy the world. So you said that this Shashin almost defeated Feng Qi when she was at Star City First High School. IBAF * king idiot if I believe that. Today is also happy. Where did the original poster sort out the historical information of the unpopular field? How come I've never heard of the name Shashin? If she really developed a 4-star technique before the age of 26, she should be very famous now. Spicy potato chips, you're making me laugh. Although Feng Qi is a scumbag, other than Lin Ran and a few others, his talent is not even qualified to be compared to others. You said that Shashin almost defeated Feng Qi, and you even said that it's the statistics of the Ministry of Education. Do you think I'll believe you? A set of combo punches. I specially went to check the relevant information, and the original poster was not lying. Shashin indeed shone during Feng Qi's most brilliant period, and her talent and potential became stronger and stronger. In the end, after Feng Qi fell, she also dimmed. This person called Shashin seemed to really regard Feng Qi as her lifelong rival. Fortunately, she did not follow Feng Qi and betray humanity. After reading the article introducing Shashin, Feng Qi already knew who she was. Other than the big-breasted, brainless girl from the next class who always shouted duel all day long, who else could it be? No wonder he felt that the name Shashin was somewhat familiar. As for Shashin, he did not pay much attention to her when they were at school. But in terms of talent, she was definitely not strong. Although he and Shashin were the first and second in Star City First High School. However, if one looked at the ranking of all the high schools in Star City, they could only be considered outstanding. There was a huge gap between them and super geniuses like Lin Ran, who had become famous before entering the school. However, judging from the results of Shashan's research and development of 12 cultivation methods, she could definitely be considered one of the top geniuses in the world. The article said that Shashan had risen from the 300th place to the second place step by step. He really did not know about this. If the article's description was true, then he had no doubt that she had the ability to defeat him in the future. The article also said that Shashan had the ability to defeat him on the day of the graduation exam. This was because the Ministry of Education would indeed compile the data of each student to evaluate their results before the exam. She had already defeated many students in the same batch before this, and he was her final target. Perhaps after defeating him, she would find a new target to challenge and start a new round of duels. It seemed that she was constantly looking for a whetstone to sharpen herself as she grew. However, during the period before the graduation exam, he had obtained a cheat code and started to take off. Therefore, in Shashan's eyes, the gap between them was getting bigger and bigger. It was also getting increasingly difficult for her to surpass him. Subsequently, Shashan worked hard to catch up. Her talent and abilities continued to grow during this period. Later on, she even created a 4-star cultivation method. The stronger her opponent was, the stronger she would become. According to the article, Shashan had completed metamorphoses time and time again under pressure, making herself stronger. Could there really be such an unconventional genius? While feeling puzzled, he started to search for information related to Shashan in the database. In the end, the information he found proved that Shashan was indeed a magical girl who had great growth potential the greater the pressure she was under. Girls with delusions are really scary. This kind of fighting spirit that grows stronger with every setback is definitely the main character in a hot-blooded manga. Perhaps you could try to give her more pressure and see how far she can grow. That might be a surprise. In the future, you can pay attention to this girl. Hearing the narrator's ridicule, Feng Qi could not help but nod. This was because what the narrator had said was exactly what he was thinking at the moment. Chapter 94. After reading Shashan's information, Xiaohei still had not appeared. This was obviously related to the fact that the suction cup's injuries had recovered a little due to the continuous feeding. After all, how long the suction cup could last against Xiaohei did not depend on the suction cup's lethality, but on how long she could last under Xiaohei's constant attacks. The relationship between the attack power and the duration was 0. The relationship between the defense and the duration was proportional. The higher the defense, the longer the duration. In the remaining time, he began to look through the historical events of the same era in the database, which were important events that could change the direction of the future. After filtering the information, the relevant content was listed on the screen. After looking through, a title attracted his attention. An organization dedicated to changing the future and advocating people's spiritual growth is actually a cancer on the path to the growth of human civilization. Content. I'm sure everyone has heard of this organization. It is the Destiny Society that was established in August 2023. From a historical perspective, we can clearly determine that this organization is definitely problematic. However, this organization existed for more than 20 years before it was disbanded. At that time, there were still many people who believed in the creed of the Destiny Society and thought that the ideas and spirit they instilled in the world were very correct. The core idea of this society was to abandon all the spiritual ideas of the past and welcome the future with the attitude of a new human being. To be more specific, the people of the Destiny Society believed that they were new human beings born in the era of the Spirit Chi revival. They were born with the nourishment of Spirit Chi and had far more advanced physical fitness and ideas than the people of ancient times. Therefore, the old ideas should not exist. For example, they believed that Confucianism should be completely removed from the textbooks. The content was too pedantic, and the people of the new era should have a new spiritual core. In this regard, they provided a lot of examples to prove their point of view was correct. For example, Confucianism's idea was to establish a political system that guaranteed the healthy and comprehensive development of people. However, the Destiny Society believed that the survival of the fittest was the core of the new era, and the weak should be eliminated. In modern society, the weak did not deserve to be allocated resources. This way, human civilization could quickly grow and defeat the domain invasion in the future. They had a lot of other weird ideas and other aspects. The Destiny Association was constantly trying to influence the modern people. They wanted them to abandon their original spiritual and cultural core and accept the changes of the new era. They wanted to change the new era. Speaking of which, I even felt that the higher-ups of this organization might have been brainwashed by a domain transcendental life form to have such a foolish idea. Our cultural heritage can be said to be extremely resplendent. The thousands of years of Chinese culture carry too many stories. Be it books, relics, or even the spirit of the craftsman, they all used different methods to record the development of mankind from ancient times to the present. It was like a story, and we were a part of this story. We were also the continuation of this story. Flipping through the poems of the Tang Dynasty, we can feel the brilliance of the literati at that time. Flipping through the historical records, it was as if one had traveled to various dynasties to experience the love and hatred of the nobles. Flipping through Sun Tzu's Art of War, it was as if he was personally on the battlefield, experiencing the strategizing of the generals and determining victory from 1,000 miles away. Other books included the Compendium of Materia Medica, the Natural Works of Creation, and the Sway Garden Food List, which recorded the crystallization of knowledge in the field. However, this organization wanted to establish a civilization with the survival of the fittest as the core values of the civilization. It really overturned my worldview. It was also because of their existence that the early development of human civilization was greatly affected. Reading up to this point, Feng Qi couldn't help but spit in his heart. This Destiny Society was really an organization that fooled the world. The author of the article even said that he suspected that the higher-ups of this organization might have been controlled by a domain transcendental life form. After reading the article, he had the same thought. As a student of Lao Wang's history, he deeply understood how profound the influence of the spirit of culture on modern mankind was. If you want to destroy a country, you have to destroy its seed. If you want to destroy its seed, you have to destroy its history. If you want to destroy its history, you have to destroy its spirit. If you want to destroy its spirit, you have to defile its hero. The actions of Destiny Society were destroying the foundation of civilization. The vast cultural heritage was the spiritual pillar of many modern people. If the spiritual core of civilization was destroyed, mankind would undoubtedly once again enter a state of barbarism, and society would gradually enter a modern barbaric society. Just like the cyberpunk society in movies and games, the living environment of mankind would be filled with disorder, chaos, filth, poison, and terror. This was fatal to the development of a civilization. While feeling angry, he began to search for information related to Destiny Society in the database. He planned to eliminate it before it developed. According to the information in the database, the time of the establishment of this organization was not long ago in the real world. The establishment location was in Star City Sports and Culture Square. At first, the Destiny Society was established by 3 high school students. They studied in a private special school in Star City and received elite training from a young age. For some reason, they had the crazy idea of reshaping the society. They believed that the residents at the bottom of Star City didn't even deserve to enjoy the minimum living standards. All the resources should be concentrated in the hands of the elites. They even wanted to establish a new caste system. This idea was obviously not instilled in them by the school. Lin Ren also came from such a special elite school. In addition to studying techniques, he also desired the rise and victory of mankind. Therefore, the 3 founders of the Destiny Society must have been instilled by some external ideology which led to such an idea. Remember the time, remember the location. When they're established, go over there and beat their butts. Let them collapse halfway through their establishment. Bullish asterisk T Destiny Association. There's nothing that can't be solved by beating them up. If I find this organization in history, I'll beat them up a second time until they don't dare to be established. Sometimes violence can solve many problems. Hearing the narration, Feng Qi couldn't help but nod. That was what he was thinking now. The Destiny Society, established by this group of brats, and advocated a twisted spirit. There would always be unreasonable people who would be influenced and become a part of it. Just like the environmental protection girls in the real world. Most people treated it as a joke, but there were also people who believed it and chose to support it. Although the Destiny Society had only been established for 20 years, it had poisoned the spirit of many people for more than 20 years. The impact on the future was imperceptible, especially the naive children. Their brains couldn't accommodate and understand so many things. In addition, their worldview was not perfect. They were easily influenced by things they didn't understand and naively thought that the world should be like this. And among these children, there might be someone who would hold a high position in the future. Their words and actions could affect the functioning of society. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but speak coldly. You have to beat them up. If you can't beat them to death, then beat them to death. Kick them a few times for me. If possible, bite them. The kind that leaves teeth marks. If I have to bite someone, I'll bite you first. He couldn't help but roll his eyes. As expected, the seal on your ancient memory has loosened again. You're actually itching to bite me again. Could it be that you remember the days when you chased me in the wind? Shut up. Don't disturb my study. Okay. Xiaohei still hadn't appeared when he closed the introduction page of the Destiny Society. Therefore, he spent the rest of his time reading the curriculum of the ability research. This time, he started reading from the third class. As for the secret manual of the domain, it wasn't time for him to use it yet. However, the curriculum of the ability research was different. He was a teacher in the real world. He often had to teach, so this content would be useful. Maybe there would be a student in Star City University who would suddenly have a flash of inspiration during his class and come up with an incredible ability research, which would affect the future. Even if there wasn't such a genius, the future development of cultivation would still be influenced by the cultivation method research and thought lessons brought by him, resulting in changes. He clicked on the video. A beautiful young woman wearing an instructor's uniform appeared on the screen. She first briefly introduced the ability research class and the basic content of the third class. Then, she began to explain the content in detail. Compared to biological knowledge, he had a certain foundation in the ability research class. He quickly entered the learning state. As time passed, the voice of the narrator finally sounded in his mind. Boss, I'm going to get off work. When I think about parting with you, I can't help but want to sing a song to send you off. After a slight pause, the background music sounded. Looking back, the clouds block the way home. Looking back, the thorns are densely packed. Tonight, there will be no more old dreams. The dreams that I once had with you, who will I tell in the future? Looking back, the figure is already far away. He turned around and looked. Xiaohei's figure was coming down the metal tunnel. There was no miracle. The suction cup couldn't defeat Xiaohei in the end. After sighing, he clenched his fists and looked at Xiaohei as he assumed the fierce tiger fist starting stance. As expected of you. Even if you're going to lose, you're still going to struggle. You won't give up a chance to struggle. This time, I bet you can last for 1 second. Bah, at least one. 5 seconds. Who are you looking down on? As Feng Qi spoke, he pierced his consciousness into his beating heart. Suddenly, the heart started to beat faster. This heart, which had been drained of qi and blood, had regained a lot of qi and blood after the subsequent hunting. However, after he used the blood sacrifice ability, the qi and blood in his heart were drained again. Qi and blood surrounded his body. His body quickly grew taller, and he once again felt the surging power flowing in his body. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a muscular man again. Ow! As he cheered himself on, he took the initiative to pounce on Xiaohei, who was already close to him. His fist, which was the size of a sandbag, was suddenly aimed at Xiaohei's face. It was different from when the suction cup's fist passed through the black fog. His fist hit the black fog and couldn't move forward. The muscles on his fist melted at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, his white bones were exposed. It's time to get off work. As the voice of the narrator sounded in his mind, his body was quickly enveloped by the black fog. His vision was gradually swallowed by darkness. Suddenly opening his eyes, Feng Qi realized that he had returned to reality. He got up from his bed and walked to the balcony of the dormitory. The sun was shining brightly outside. The willow trees by the lake swayed in the wind. There were students reading on the bench by the lake. There were also students feeding the goldfish in the lake. Everything in front of him was so beautiful and full of vitality. At this moment, with the gentle breeze on his face, he couldn't help but smile brightly. This is great. Chapter 95, Star City University, Dorm 301. Sitting in front of his desk, Feng Qi started to organize his gains from the future dream and recorded them in his notebook. This way, he would be able to think clearly and not be a loss when making new plans. The first was the increase in strength. Strength increase 1. The prefix title strong has been upgraded to very strong. His physical fitness has been doubled. The 20% increase in physical strength has been changed to 30%. His body's self-recovery ability has also been improved. Strength increase 2. The prefix titled toughness has been upgraded to LV5. His muscle toughness has been increased by 5%. Note, this ability upgrade may affect the combat strength increase in the blood source state. After all, it's muscle strengthening. The blood source state is a muscular man. Strength increase 3. Obtained a new prefix title blood source. After using it, his strength will be greatly increased for a short period of time. His appearance will also change. The prerequisite is that he needs to consume his own blood. Note, it's best not to try this ability in the real world. Otherwise, it may cause very serious consequences. However, there's a high probability that it will be under control. After calculating the gains in strength, Feng Qi started to organize the gains in intelligence. Intelligence gain 1. It is confirmed that Mu Qing will not be controlled by evil forces in the future. The creation of the Lumin Can and the massacre of the city were all her own ideas. Note, you can consider giving your email to Mu Qing next time to learn the truth. Intelligence gain 2. The sucker is basically confirmed to be a clone of Mu Qing. The rune crystal on him is also likely to be the one on Mu Qing. The sucker is most likely created by the Scarlet Institute. Note, based on this speculation, the Scarlet Institute's position may be good and not evil. However, it is not 100% certain. Intelligence gain 3. A mysterious secret door was found in the abandoned hospital community, where the sucker was often found in the future dream. It is most likely an experimental base left behind by the Scarlet Institute before the destruction of human civilization. There may be important information inside. Note, there is no way to open it yet. You can find clues in the real world or break it with brute force when you have absolute strength. Intelligence gain 4. A scroll made of special materials was found in the Star City underground shelter. The map on it is most likely related to the Heavenly Road. Intelligence gain 5. The brain in a vat plan that Mo Fei proposed in his email can be implemented if the conditions permit and the time is ripe. Note, I'm so miserable in the future QVQ. Intelligence gain 6. For now, we can confirm that Lu Yu and the 3 Xiao brothers are not werewolves. Note, your future self has been implanted with a monitoring chip. You can start looking for your target from this aspect. Intelligence gain 7. The 3 brats have formed an influential organization called Destiny Society. It's time to strike. Intelligence gain 8. Strengthening the sucker can increase the time you can stay in the future dream. Intelligence receiver 9. Star City First High School student, Shashin, has a unique talent that allows her to grow under pressure. We can look forward to her future growth. Perhaps there will be an unexpected surprise. Feng Qi closed the notebook after sorting out his findings and gains from the future dream. Now that the balance of his bank card had been depleted, he could no longer purchase any more rune crystals to replenish the energy required to enter the future dream. However, when he thought of the Tiger Spirit concept match that was about to begin, he didn't panic at all. In his opinion, the championship was already within his grasp. It was only a matter of time before $8 million entered his pocket. He looked at the time. It was 5 o'clock in the evening. Therefore, he took out his phone and dialed Lynn Rand's number. A few seconds later, the call went through. Before he could speak, Lynn Rand's voice came first. Gone fan? Is gone fan the only thing in your head? Upon hearing that, Lin Chi's confused voice sounded on the phone. What else can I do for you? Nothing. Actually, I just wanted to tell you to go to Gone Fan. Lin Ran was speechless. After he hung up the phone, he stood up and walked out of the dormitory building. As for why Gone Fan didn't inform Mu Qing, it was because Mu Qing didn't need to be informed at all. No one arrived at the Shuefu restaurant earlier than her, and no one left the Shuefu restaurant later than her. In terms of Gone Fan, Mu Qing always arrived early and came back late. She was hardworking and hardworking. After he left the dormitory building, he walked along the flower bed outside the dormitory building and went straight to the Shuefu restaurant. The evening sky was filled with red clouds, and it was magnificent. Looking at the sky, he thought of the blood moon that never set in the future dream. For some reason, he suddenly felt sad that the sunset was infinitely beautiful, but the dusk was approaching. As the focus of Star City University, Feng Qi was greeted by students on the way to the restaurant from time to time. Feng Qi nodded in response to them all. Seeing the smiles on the students' faces, the determination in his heart was comforted a little. All of this was worth protecting with all his might. When he entered the Shuefu restaurant, the smell of delicious food brushed past the tip of his nose, and the melancholy in his heart instantly disappeared. Nothing could make a person happier than eating dry rice. Especially after his strength increased in the future dream, it made his appetite soar. He felt like he could eat a cow right now. He took a tray from the tray shelf and went to the dining area to choose food. After staying in the future dream for a few days, although he didn't feel hungry, he still missed the feeling of eating very much. Tonight, the food in the Shuefu restaurant was exceptionally sumptuous. Braised pork ribs, Alaskan abalone, Boston lobster, stewed pork knuckle, pickled cabbage vermicelli, tofu with shallots, roasted lamb, steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers until the tray was completely full. Feng Qi smiled, nodded, and left under the auntie's shameful waste advice. It was impossible to waste food. There would definitely be more to eat later. When he came to the north corner of the restaurant, Mu Qing and Lin Ran had already arrived. He sat down next to Lin Ran, grabbed a roasted lamb leg, and took a big bite. The meat was crispy, fragrant, and not greasy. Delicious. As he sighed in his heart, he turned to look at Lin Ran and the few pieces of meat on his plate. He then smiled. You have a good appetite today. Hearing this, Lin Ran looked up at the food piled up on his plate, then looked at Mu Qing's plate, and then looked down at his own plate. His expression was a little helpless. I ate too much at noon today, so my appetite is not very good tonight. Good luck. At this time, Mu Qing raised her head and gave Lin Ran an encouraging look. Then, she lowered her head and continued to eat. This made Lin Ran feel a little sad. He wanted to work hard, but this thing could not be achieved through hard work. Eating with Feng Qi and Mu Qing and watching them eat heartily, he felt that he was also affected. His appetite had increased a lot compared to before. However, in front of Feng Qi and Mu Qing's terrifying appetite, there was no difference whether his appetite was good or bad. It was just a mouthful. Thinking of this, Lin Ran suddenly had an idea. He felt that he might be able to research a special spell to help with digestion. It was similar to how Duan Yu pretended to drink in front of Xiao Feng in wuxia novels. Looking at the serious Lin Ran, Feng Qi, who was already hungry, ignored him and began to eat. He gradually became intoxicated by the collision of taste buds and food, unable to extricate himself. This meal lasted about half an hour. During this time, he went to order another meal. Just as he had thought, after his strength had increased in the future dream, his appetite in the real world had also increased. After this meal, he received close to 0.5% of energy replenishment, and it was still slowly increasing after eating. He felt that if his physical strength continued to increase, perhaps one day he could completely rely on the Shuefu restaurant to satisfy his energy consumption. Of course, He could only think about all this. With his appetite at that level, he would probably have to eat almost half of the food in the Shuefa restaurant every meal to fill his stomach. He would definitely be caught by Fuxing for a physical examination for fear that there was something wrong with him. Mu Qing was a rune-modified person. Her large appetite could be explained, and no one would think that there was a problem. If a normal person like him had such a terrifying appetite, he would only be thought of as a mutation. Otherwise, he would be parasitized by a domain creature. After dinner, he and Lin Ran went straight to the Academy's library, reading for the rise of mankind. After finding a basic book on the research of techniques, he also picked an advanced book on the research of spells for Lin Ran. Lin Ran was the founder of a large school of thought in the field of spells in the future. In fact, he was looking forward to Lin Ran's achievements in this field. The future people's evaluation of Lin Ran was proof. If Lin Ran had not made a mistake and caused the research of spells to be interrupted, he would have had more achievements in the field of spells. Seal-style spells were not Lin Ran's end. After perfecting the initial concept of seal-style spells, his talent in spell research was still in the rising stage. However, he suddenly changed to studying techniques. Thinking of this, Feng Qi raised his head and looked at Lin Ran, who was sitting across from him. Lin Ran, why are you so determined to study techniques? Is it just for your dream? Faced with the question, Lin Ran could not help but be stunned. After a moment of silence, a nostalgic look appeared on his face. This isn't just my dream. It's also my grandfather's dream. He was once a researcher at the Tiger Soul Research Institute. His lifelong dream was to develop a super cultivation technique that could change the world and make humans stronger than domain creatures. I grew up under his influence, so I've always been very interested in researching cultivation techniques. Unfortunately, when my grandfather was perfecting the concept of the technique he proposed, due to the improper circulation of spirit energy during cultivation, all the meridians in his body were broken and he died. Therefore, I want to shoulder my grandfather's dream and develop the super technique that he pursued all his life. Feng Qi, who wanted to comfort him, suddenly did not know what to say after hearing the cause of Lin Ran's grandfather's death. Encouragement? Obviously, he could not encourage it. Regardless of whether the technique that Lin Ran developed had problems caused by external factors and caused millions of meridians to be broken and die, as long as the source of the technique that Lin Ran developed was eliminated, this problem could be eliminated. As for persuading Lin Ran to give up at this time, it would be too unreasonable. Therefore, he chose to remain silent. Hey, isn't that the monk? At this moment, Lin Ran's words interrupted his thoughts. Following Lin Ran's gaze, he turned his head and saw the monk sitting not far away. He was seriously flipping through a book with a yellowed cover. Seeing this, Feng Qi was a little surprised. He did not expect the monk to take the initiative to study. He suddenly felt a little gratified. He felt that the monk was not as unreliable as he had imagined. At this moment, the monk closed the book, stood up, and walked toward the bathroom. Seeing this, Feng Qi also stood up. He wanted to see what book the monk was reading. After all, the monk was his student. In the future, he could teach him some knowledge that he copied from the future database according to the monk's preferences. He came to the desk where the monk was sitting and reached out to pick up the yellowed book. However, when he saw the 4 big words on the cover of the book, his expression froze. Uniform temptation, Feng Qi was confused. At this moment, the good impression he had of the monk disappeared. With a critical attitude, he opened the book. In the end, the content of the book made the anger on his face turn into confusion. The content of the book talked about how to subdue the desire in one's heart and calmly face temptation. This was a King Buddhist scripture. Chapter 96. Looking at the yellowed book in his hand, Feng Qi was speechless. He felt that he had completely misunderstood the monk. He was just reading Buddhist scriptures. It was his own thoughts that were evil. He didn't have the preconceived notion that uniform temptation was about the temptation of uniforms. However, the actual content was about the temptation of uniforms. While lamenting in his heart, he continued to flip through a few pages. Then, his expression froze again. Looking at the illustrations of policewomen nurses, teachers, and other women, he felt that his IQ was being insulted. At this moment, his emotions were in turmoil. His good impression of the monk collapsed again. He was actually reading this in the sacred school library. Seeing Feng Qi standing there in a daze, Lin Ran came to his side. When he saw the revealing illustrations in the book, he couldn't help but laugh. Then, he realized that there were still many students studying in the reading room. He quickly stopped, but he still couldn't suppress the smile on his face. "Brother Qi, I like this monk's personality. It will be interesting to have him in our class." While the veins on Feng Qi's forehead were throbbing, he had a helpless expression. From the first time they met, he realized that the monk seemed to have been controlled for too long. After coming to Star City University, he was like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins. He couldn't control his heart anymore. With such a personality, there was no way he could study well. He would probably end up at the bottom of the class. Lao Wang said that he couldn't give up on any student, regardless of whether they were talented or not. However, he didn't expect to meet the monk's problematic student as soon as he became a teacher. At this moment, the monk's figure walked over from not far away. Seeing that Feng Qi was holding his copy of Uniform Temptation, the monk's expression couldn't help but freeze. Then, he realized that he had discovered something. During this period of time, Feng Qi often went to the special training field. Therefore, the monk already knew that Feng Qi would be the teacher of Combat Class 3. Being caught by his own teacher made him feel a little embarrassed. However, he still braced himself and walked to Feng Qi. He pretended to be calm and said, "Miss Feng, Mr. Lin, what a coincidence. Monk, can you explain what this is?" Lin Ran smiled and pointed at the yellowed book. Hearing this, the monk's expression was calm. "Oh, this is a scripture from our Buddhist sect. It's used to sharpen one's mind." "What about this?" Feng Qi pointed at the illustration in the book. "Master said that the way to overcome fear is to face it head-on. The way to overcome temptation is to face it head-on. That's why I'm looking at these illustrations to overcome temptation." "Ha ha ha, monk, you're really something." Lin Ran gave him a thumbs up. Feng Qi felt a little helpless when he heard this fallacious argument. However, this was the monk's private life after all, so he couldn't say anything. It was completely understandable that young people were hot-blooded. What he was puzzled about was why the monk was reading this in the library. Thinking of this, he immediately opened his mouth and said, "Monk, don't read this stuff in the library next time. It won't be good if others see it." As he spoke, he handed the book back to the monk. "Embarrassing yourself is a small matter, but embarrassing our Combat Class 3 is a big deal," Lin Ran added with a smile. The monk, who reached out to take the book, scratched his head. "It's the special training period now. The freshmen aren't allowed to stay in the dormitory. The instructors will come to check on me from time to time, so I can only come to the library to read. All right, you can continue with your uniform seduction, but restrain yourself when the class officially begins." "No problem, Miss Feng." The monk scratched his head and agreed. After returning to their seats, Feng Qi and Lin Ran smiled as they looked at the monk, who had a serious expression and was still seducing in his uniform seduction. "Brother Qi, this monk was just holding back previously. Now, he's completely unrestrained. If you really feel that you can't control yourself, perhaps you can use your ultimate move as a teacher." "What ultimate move?" "Invite his parent, who is also his master. Invite his master to accompany him in subduing his uniform seduction." Feng Qi revealed a mischievous smile. "Ha ha, you're too mean." After the interlude, Feng Qi and Lin Ran opened the book and began to study. The world outside the window was gradually enveloped by the curtain of night, and the street lamps in the school were all lit up. The world outside the library was slightly noisy, but in the quiet reading room, there was only the sound of books flipping and notes being taken under the soft light. The atmosphere of study was very strong. Studying for the rise of mankind was definitely not an empty promise. Someone once suggested that they should vigorously develop aerospace technology. The way out for mankind was in the starry universe. Only there could they find a glimmer of hope for mankind. The person who proposed this idea felt that mankind should escape from the new world that was gradually being covered by the domain and find a new habitat. This idea was approved by some people. Although they knew that only some people would be able to leave by doing this, they felt that this might be the only way to preserve the spark of mankind. As elites, they were the first choice to escape. However, more people objected at that time. Someone said this at the meeting. You feel the human civilization is not strong enough in the face of the domain invasion, but you can make it stronger through learning. Our country has an old saying, study for the rise of great Xia. In the future, this saying can also be changed to study for the rise of mankind. Since then, studying for the rise of mankind had become the goal that generations of people worked tirelessly for. The inferior roots of human nature could not cover up the brilliance of human nature. Those ancestors who stood up were like a ray of light in the darkness, illuminating the way forward for mankind. They felt that although this broken world had thousands of flaws, it was still their home, their homeland. Therefore, they should not run away from challenges. The best way to deal with them was to make themselves stronger. In the midst of studying, Feng Qi and Lin Ran forgot about the time. During this period, there were people leaving and entering the reading room from time to time. After reading Cultivation Technique Research Basics 6 in his hand, Feng Qi looked up at the clock hanging on the north wall of the reading room and realized that it was close to midnight. When he turned his head, the monk had already disappeared. However, nearly half of the reading room was still occupied by students who were diligently studying by themselves. Brother Qi, are you going back? At this moment, Lin Ran put down his book and asked, Yes, I plan to go back first. What about you? Let's go together. I'm almost done reading. After putting the borrowed books back in their original places, the two of them walked out of the library. The night wind was noisy, and the hot air was swept away. At this moment, the temperature was just right, making one feel very comfortable. On the way back to the dormitory, Lin Ran seemed to have thought of something and suddenly said, Brother Qi, I heard that the various academies will be holding a new batch of combat class team competition. Are you interested in participating? Combat class team competition. Yes, there will be many new combat classes from various academies participating. It will mainly be a competition of team combat abilities. After all, the students of the combat class will basically enter a domain battle group in the future. Therefore, the ability to coordinate and fight in a team is very important. This team competition is to let the new students realize the importance of a team and build a collective consciousness. Including me and Senior Mu Qing, there are 13 people in our class. Although the number of participants is a little small, there is still Lu Yu, the 3 Xiao brothers, and me. If we participate, our ranking shouldn't be bad. After hearing Lin Ran's explanation, Feng Qi was instantly interested. However, when he heard Lin Ran's last sentence, he was speechless. Do you think you're the strongest in our class? Not necessarily. I think Lu Yu's strength might not be weaker than mine. He might even be stronger than me. As for the others, I'm not bragging, but they're basically no match for me. Then what do you think of Senior Mu Qing's strength? Feng Qi asked with a strange expression. I don't know, but I have a rough understanding of rune-modified humans. I think Senior Mu Qing won't last more than 3 rounds against me. Although it's a little hurtful to say this. Remember what you said. When the time comes, your face might hurt a little. He couldn't help but want to laugh at Lin Ran's self-confidence. Mu Qing, who was labeled as the Great Demon King by future people, was one of the absolute combat strength ceilings in human history. Although Lin Ran was very talented, he was only talented in spell research. His combat ability was not on the same level as Mu Qing's. There was an insurmountable gap between them. Brother Qi, what do you mean by that? Lin Ran couldn't help but ask curiously. You'll know in the future. Young people don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I hate riddlers the most. While chatting, the two of them arrived at the dormitory building. After saying goodbye to each other, they stepped into their respective dormitory buildings. Before he entered the door, Feng Qi saw the express delivery package in front of the door. This surprised him a little. He didn't remember shopping online recently. If it was a gift from a classmate, they would have notified him in advance. Therefore, the appearance of this express delivery package was a little strange. He picked up the package and glanced at the recipient on it. It was him. The sender's column said, Joint Research Institute. He immediately understood what was inside the package. So he took the package and entered the door. The Joint Research Institute's status among the major research institutes was similar to the early United Nations. In fact, it didn't have the power to forcibly manage the major research institutes, especially the special research institutes. The purpose of its existence was to provide a platform for the major research institutes to communicate and cooperate. It was also responsible for managing the database of cultivation techniques and issuing rewards. Therefore, this package sent by the Joint Research Institute was obviously a reward for his research and development of cultivation techniques. Feng Qi came to the desk and opened the package. What appeared in front of him was a dark blue metal box. The surface of the box was engraved with a silver symmetrical wheat pattern representing the Joint Research Institute. It reflected light under the light and had a technological feel. When he opened the metal box, a silver medal stood in the center of the box. The medal was about the size of a child's palm. It had a heavy metal texture. A sharp sword was engraved on it, and flowers were blooming around it. There was a line of words engraved on the back of the medal. Salute to you for blazing a path forward for human civilization. Silver medal for outstanding contribution. Holding the medal, a smile appeared on Feng Qi's face. He said that he didn't care about these worldly honors, but the moment he received it, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Some things were far more valuable than the actual object. For more than 500 years, many heroes had held this heavy honor like him, looking forward to the arrival of a beautiful tomorrow in their hearts. They had also worked tirelessly for this for their entire lives. The Star City under his feet was built with the blood, flesh, tendons, and bones of those ancestors. That was why they could have a stable and orderly life after the catastrophe. There were two meanings behind this Medal of Honor. One was historical, and the other was spiritual. The former could reflect the world, and the latter could nourish the heart. His fingers stroked the long sword and flowers on the medal. He couldn't help but think of the deeds of the heroes of the era that Lao Wang talked about in history class. At this moment, it was as if time and space had intersected. He felt the weight and spirit behind this honor. Chapter 97. After putting the medal back in the center, Feng Qi opened the second layer of the metal box. What appeared in front of him was a bottle of wine with a silver sword logo. Through the transparent glass bottle, he could clearly see the sparkling light red wine inside. There was a small card in front of the wine that introduced the origin of the wine in detail. Merit Wine, Origin, Joint Research Institute. Materials used to brew. Floating cloud fruit, level 7 spiritual plant. 9 spirit leaf, level 8 spiritual plant. 100 spirit blood, mixed with the blood of 100 types of domain creatures. Luminous mushroom, level 7 spiritual plant. Light lantern grass, level 8 spiritual plant. Stacked mist snake venom, level 5 spiritual material. Effect. Consuming a small amount every day can prolong life and strengthen the body. It can also be used as a supplement during cultivation to greatly increase cultivation efficiency. Note, the effect of the merit wine is very strong. Do not consume too much. Otherwise, it will create a huge burden on the body and there's a risk of your body exploding. Merit Wine, Silver, Serial Number 118-163 Gift. Feng Qi, Star City Resident Code 117-3688. Flipping to the back of the card, there was a line of words written on it, dedicated to you, who fought tirelessly for the rise of mankind. After reading the description of the Merit Wine, Feng Qi couldn't help but click his tongue. This inconspicuous bottle of wine was estimated to cost a few million to make. Last time, he spent $230,000 to buy the level 4 spiritual plant, 9 color flower. Although the Merit Wine was made in batches, the ingredients of this wine were mixed with nearly 100 types of spiritual plants and spiritual materials. One could imagine its value. Also, this bottle of wine had its own code. It could be used as a family heirloom. Putting the Merit Wine aside, he opened the third layer of the metal box. There was a document inside. On it was the certification information of gymnastics training 2, 0-inch, and the test results. Other than that, on the bottom right corner was the certification stamp of the Tiger Soul Institute and Joint Research Institute. After folding the certification document and putting it into the metal box, he sat in front of the desk and picked up the merit wine. Although the wine was precious, he would definitely have more in the future, so he drank it. He was full of anticipation for the effects of the merit wine. Just as Feng Qi was about to unscrew the sealed bottle cap, he suddenly thought of something. He then took out his smartphone and called Lin Ran. A moment later, Lin Ran's puzzled voice came from the other end of the phone. "Brother Qi, it's already midnight. Why are you looking for me? Come to the lake in front of the dormitory. I have something good to share with you. Is it a peerless, secret manual on the research of cultivation methods?" Lin Ran asked expectantly. "No. Good night." Feng Qi was speechless. "Are you sure you're not coming? I'm getting out of bed now. How can I not take Brother Qi's instructions seriously? After all, you're the guiding light of my cultivation technique research. You illuminate my path of cultivation technique research. You are becoming more and more like a bootlicker. I like it." Slurp, slurp, slurp. Hearing Lin Ran's licking sound, Feng Qi felt a chill and quickly hung up the phone. Then, he opened his contact list and found Mu Qing's number. He called her. The phone rang a few times before connected. Mu Qing's slightly confused voice came through. "Hey, junior brother, what's the matter? Come to the lake in front of the dormitory now. I have something good to share with you." The person on the other end of the phone hesitated for a few seconds before speaking. "Why don't we do it tomorrow? I'm still sleeping. If I wake up now, I'll be hungry again. The supper provided by the restaurant at night doesn't have any staple food to fight hunger. I won't be full. I have something especially delicious here. Then, I'll get out of bed now. Wait for me." After hanging up the phone, Feng Qi went to the dormitory's kitchen and took 3 wine glasses. Then, he left the dormitory with the merit wine. The night wind was noisy, and the air was exceptionally fresh. The street lamps outside the dormitory were wrapped in summer insects, causing the lights to flicker mottled. The willow trees by the lake swayed with the wind. The summer was thick. While waiting, Lin Ran and Mu Qing's figures appeared in the distance. Lin Ran was clearly still awake. He came over with a smile on his face. As for Mu Qing, she looked very dispirited. At that moment, she had a blank expression, and her eyes were almost narrowed. The 3 of them came to a bench by the lake and sat down. At that moment, Lin Ran's gaze was already attracted by the merit wine branded with a golden label in his hand. "Brother Qi, is this merit wine?" Bingo! When he heard Feng Qi's affirmative answer, Lin Ran looked a little surprised. Other people keep merit wine after obtaining it. Are you going to drink it now? There will be more in the future. It's not like there's only one bottle, Feng Qi replied with a grin. When he heard that, Lin Ran gave him a thumbs up. "As expected of my brother Qi, you're so domineering. In that case, quickly give me a glass to try." Mu Qing, who was sitting on Feng Qi's left, still looked confused. She asked softly, "What's merit wine? Also, I don't drink." Looking at the puzzled Mu Qing, before Feng Qi could explain, Lin Ran giggled and said, "Senior, this is good stuff. You can't buy it outside even if you want to. It's a special gift from the Joint Research Institute to recipients of the Outstanding Contribution Award to Mankind. Ordinary people can't even get a bottle in their lifetime. So give it a try. Actually, I don't drink either, but this is a little special. I have a try no matter what." After hearing Lin Ran's explanation, Mu Qing seemed to understand and nodded obediently. Under the expectant gazes of Lin Ran and Mu Qing, Feng Qi reached out and unscrewed the sealed bottle cap. Oh! After a muffled sound, the rich fragrance of wine spread out. It lingered at the tip of the nose for a moment before drifting away with the night wind. He handed the wine glasses to Lin Ran and Mu Qing. He first filled his own glass, then filled Mu Qing's glass. When it was Lin Ran's, he asked with a playful expression, "How much can you drink? That has to be a full glass. Who are you looking down on?" After hearing Lin Ran's answer, he immediately filled Lin Ran's glass, but he still reminded him, "Take a sip first. This thing is very strong. Your body can't take if you drink too much. Take it back if you can't finish it. Got it. Lin Ran nodded, then raised his glass and giggled. To the rise of mankind, cheers. After putting down the wine bottle, Feng Qi also raised his full glass and clinked it with Lin Ran and Mu Qing's. He brought the glass to his mouth and took a sip first. When the wine entered his mouth, there was a thick texture. Then, the medicinal fragrance instantly spread in his mouth and nose. The taste buds on his tongue were activated. When it collided with the liquid, he felt all kinds of different flavors. When the wine flowed down his throat, it was as if he was suddenly enlightened. In an instant, all the pores in his body relaxed, as if his cells were activated. They were screaming under the stimulation of the wine. When his stomach came into contact with the wine, after a few seconds of heat, a warm current spread to his limbs and bones. He suddenly felt warm and drunk. This feeling lasted for a while, before slowly fading away. However, the fragrance in his mouth and nose never dissipated. The aftertaste lingered. The energy progress bar also jumped along with it. In the blink of an eye, it jumped from 49.8% to 0.5% per second. It only slowed down when the energy value reached 62.3%. In addition, he found that the energy spread by the wine was not completely absorbed by the energy replenishment bar. Some of it stayed in his body and made his blood flow like a surging tide. Some of the energy was slowly being absorbed and digested by his body. It feels so good. I feel like I'm flying. Lin Ran let out a sigh. His face had already turned red. He then continued, I can only take a sip. If I drink too much, I might not be able to take it. The effect of this medicine is too. Halfway through his sentence, a tent slowly rose. F***CK. It has such an effect? Looking down, Lin Ran quickly turned around. Ha ha, I told you to take it easy. Compared to the lasting effect Lin Ran had after drinking the merit wine, he had the energy replenishment bar to help him digest it. Therefore, the burning sensation quickly subsided. He turned around and looked. Mu Qing had drunk almost half of the wine in her cup. At this time, her face was filled with a silly smile. Her face was only slightly red, but the rune crystal on her left arm was shining brightly. It was like the timer on Ultraman's chest, flashing. Seeing this scene, Feng Qi could not help but imagine that a series of numbers were jumping above Mu Qing's head. Strength +1 physical strength, +1 reflexes, +1 elemental resistance, +1 physical recovery, +1 her combat power was rapidly increasing. He had some understanding of Mu Qing's ability to absorb energy from food in the future database. It could be said that the more she ate, the stronger she became. At this time, Lin Ran took a second sip, but soon he could not take it anymore. Blood flowed from his nose. While feeling embarrassed, he could not help but say, I was careless. It seems that my body can't take it anymore. Let me swim in the lake for a while to digest it. As he said that, he stood up. Under the surprised gaze of Feng Qi and Mu Qing, he took a few steps forward and jumped into the lake. He began to paddle his limbs vigorously. He turned his gaze to Mu Qing, who had already drunk to the bottom. He could not help but ask with a smile, Senior, do you want another cup? When Mu Qing heard this, she immediately shook her head. After experiencing the magical effects of the wine, she already understood how precious this cup of wine was. It was almost equivalent to the energy she usually consumed for half a month. In addition, the wine contained many precious herbs that could strengthen one's physique. It had a very significant auxiliary effect on improving one's strength. At this moment, when she heard Feng Qi ask if she wanted more, she immediately chose to refuse. Seeing the change in Mu Qing's expression, Feng Qi immediately understood what she was thinking. From the beginning, he approached Mu Qing with a purpose. To now, he had already regarded Mu Qing as his confidant. When he recalled the contents of Mu Qing's diary in the future database, a warm feeling flowed in his heart. When everyone doubted her, Mu Qing resolutely chose to stand on his side. After he died, Mu Qing often visited him with flowers, knelt in front of his tombstone, and played the harmonica. Such a loyal and righteous friend was worth cherishing. Thinking of this, he reached out and took the wine cup in Mu Qing's hand. He poured another cup. Drink if you want. Don't be shy with me. There will be more of this wine in the future. Hearing this, Mu Qing nodded obediently. After lowering her head to take a small sip, her face was filled with a happy smile. Suddenly, she felt that in addition to dreams, every little thing in life could be very beautiful. Fengqi also lowered his head at this moment and took a small sip of wine. The familiar feeling came again. His vision was in a daze. It was as if there was a flame burning in his body, bringing continuous heat to his body. It took a long time before it slowly subsided. Enjoying the evening breeze and drinking wine, the depression in his heart was vented in the hazy drunkenness. It was said that wine could wash away worries. At this moment, he deeply understood. After taking another sip, he sat on the bench and looked up at the sky. The summer night breeze gently blew through the clouds, forming wisps of clouds in the night sky. Under the quiet moonlight, the shadows of the trees swayed gently. Everything seemed so beautiful. Chapter 98. Star City University Dormitory. The sky was getting brighter. An array of morning light spilled into the room through the window. Fengqi woke up at this time. He felt refreshed when he opened his eyes. His vision was so clear that he could even see the dust in the air clearly. The merit wine from last night had not completely worn off yet, and there was still some warmth left in his body. A bottle of merit wine could make about 4 glasses. Lin Ren had 1 glass, Mu Qing had 2, and he drank a little more than 1 glass. His energy bar had risen to 96.8%, and he would be able to fill it up after eating the food from Shuefu restaurant for a few more days. After returning to the dormitory last night, he specifically looked up the merit wine on the internet. The results surprised him greatly. Excluding the additional value, the actual production price of this merit wine was less than $1 million. Although it was made with hundreds of spiritual materials and special techniques, it was still made in batches, and the final product was definitely diluted. Otherwise, the merit wine made with hundreds of spiritual materials would be worth more than $100 million. Among the spiritual materials, there was no lack of precious spiritual plants that were worth more than $1 million. He only drank 1 glass last night, and it was worth about $250,000, but the effect was very significant. It increased from 49.8% to 96.8%, an increase of 47%. The rune crystal of Advanced Wolf cost about $880,000, and it increased by 105% after consumption. After conversion, every 1% increase would cost about $8,380 in cash. 1 glass of merit wine cost about $250,000, and it increased by 47%, so every 1% would cost about $5,300 in cash. In addition, the effect of the merit wine was not completely absorbed by the energy bar. Part of it was absorbed and digested by his body, which was why he still felt warm in his body. In comparison, the merit wine was more than twice as expensive as the rune crystal of Advanced Wolf. This piqued his interest in the craftsmanship of the merit wine. If he could make this wine himself, it would save him a lot of money in the future. After washing up, Fengqi sat in front of his desk and started to look up the production process of merit wine. But soon he chose to give up. It was not that he could not find the relevant content, but even if he found it, he did not have the ability to copy it. Here, he had to mention a special profession, spiritual apothecary. And the merit wine was concocted by a professional spirit apothecary. It seemed to be a very ordinary profession, but in reality, one needed to learn a lot of knowledge in order to become a spiritual apothecary. It was just like chemistry in reality. Spirit apothecaries were different from researchers who studied cultivation methods and spells. They mainly studied the composition, nature, structure, and changing rules of the spiritual materials in the field. After modulation, the effects would be sublimated. Therefore, if one wanted to become a spirit apothecary, the first requirement was to identify the detailed effects of the spirit materials and spirit plants in the domain. Fengqi, who was slightly interested in this, looked up information related to how to become a spiritual apothecary. Immediately, a dense list of knowledge appeared on the screen. Spirit Apothecary should know handbook, 8 volumes. Spirit Plant Identification, 32 volumes. Spirit Plant Harmonization. How to maximize the medicinal efficacy, 12 volumes. How to avoid explosions during the process of concoction, full volume. Spirit Plant Characteristics produced in various major fields, 12 volumes. Spirit Plant Cultivation Techniques, 8 volumes. There were many things that a spirit apothecary needed to learn to become a spirit apothecary. Especially if one wanted to become a professional spirit apothecary, they would need to invest a lot of energy into their studies. However, as long as one entered the door, they would immediately be rated as a Class C elite human. They could maximize the effects of the resources produced in the domain. They could even mix the medicinal efficacies of 2 kinds of spirit plants to produce a 1+1 effect that exceeded 2. Take the merit wine, for example. The actual value of a bottle of wine was about 1 million. However, after being mixed by a spirit apothecary, the effect produced was twice as good as the spirit plants bought at the same price. In addition to spirit plants, rune crystals were also within the range of the spirit apothecary's ability to mix. This profession could be said to be a lifelong learning profession. This was because humans would always discover new spiritual materials and spirit plants in their exploration of fields. There would also always be new fields that would bring new spiritual materials. After understanding the spirit apothecary system in detail, Feng Qi decisively chose to give up. It was difficult to become a spirit apothecary. It was even more difficult to master it. He didn't have a lot of time to learn about spirit apothecaries, unless he obtained the unlimited memory function. However, he remembered that there was a new student named Lu Ping and in Combat Class 3. It was written in his personal information that he was somewhat proficient in spirit apothecary-related knowledge. He decided to ask him when school officially started and see if he could improve the effect of Advanced Wolf's rune crystals. He was about to have 8 million in his account. However, when it came to money, he should save as much as possible. He wasn't rich enough to squander it at will. There were still many places where he would need to spend money in the future. After closing the search page, he stood up and stretched. At this time, the medicinal efficacies of the merit wine still lingered, making him feel warm and comfortable all over. After leaving the dormitory, he first went to the Shuefu restaurant to meet up with Lin Ran and Mu Qing. Then, they had a sumptuous breakfast. During breakfast, Lin Ran's face was ruddy. Obviously, the effect of the merit wine hadn't been completely absorbed. Therefore, he carried a tissue with him so that it was convenient for him to wipe his nose when it bled. As for Mu Qing's condition, she was no different from usual. Even the highly effective merit wine was not enough in front of her strong digestive ability. At this moment, it had been completely absorbed. After breakfast, Feng Qi got up and prepared to go to the technique class. At this time, Lin Ran, who had just wiped his nosebleed, looked up. "Brother Qi, going to class? Together?" Hearing this, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. "You're already like this. Go back to the dormitory and have a good rest. It's best if you seize the time to cultivate. Don't waste the efficacy of the merit wine." Hearing his answer, Lin Ran nodded resentfully. Obviously, he was unwilling to give up. Feng Qi chose to turn a blind eye to this. Lin Ran's passion for the study of techniques had always been a headache for him, and he couldn't find a solution for the time being. Even if he told Lin Ran directly that his study of techniques in the future would lead to disaster, he wouldn't believe it. He would never give up until he tried it himself. The effect of direct persuasion was minimal. He had to go in a roundabout way. After leaving the Shuefu restaurant, Feng Qi went straight to the teaching building. At this time, the Technique Class 1 classroom was already crowded with students carrying notebooks with them. When they saw his arrival, they all smiled and greeted him. After Feng Qi nodded to greet them, he walked in the classroom and came to the front of the podium. The originally noisy classroom suddenly became silent after his arrival. This was also a way for the students to show their respect. "Let's start the class." Looking at the smiling Feng Qi, the students also smiled knowingly and opened their notebooks one after another. Today's class will continue to focus on perfecting the concept of a human body and spirit. In the second half of the class, I'll talk about the research of techniques. As he spoke, the students listened very seriously. They cherished teachers like Feng Qi, who could improve their thinking and cognitive ability. In the classroom, other than his voice, there was only the swish-swish sound of pens rubbing against paper. The learning atmosphere was very strong. Feng Qi also enjoyed the process of pouring out his knowledge. Just like when an author wrote a novel, when his work was recognized, all his efforts would be worth it. In the second half of the class, Feng Qi began to talk about the research of techniques. At this time, a female student wearing glasses in the classroom suddenly raised her hand. "Student, is there anything I can help you with?" Feng Qi smiled and nodded as he spoke. Faced with the question, the female student immediately stood up and asked with a serious expression, "Miss Feng, there are so many students who graduate from the technique research class every year. Why are there so few people who can produce results? Is it because we're working hard in the wrong way? What should we do to be like you?" Faced with the question, Feng Qi pondered for a moment and said, "Talent is very important, but so is hard work. Especially for people who don't have talent in this area, hard work is more important than anything else." "Then what should a person with mediocre talent like me do?" the female student asked curiously. "Even if I tell you, you might not do it." Feng Qi could not help but smile. "Tell me what to do first." In fact, this problem is very similar to the ancient times when counselors gave ideas to monarchs. They would give 3 strategies: the best, middle, and worst. However, monarchs generally would not choose the best strategy. Even if I tell you the best strategy now, no one will necessarily implement it. Under the puzzled gazes of the students, Feng Qi continued. "Now I'll give you 3 choices, and then you tell me which one to choose. I'll give you the best strategy first. From now on, abandon everything outside of learning. Stay away from games, pleasure, and lust. Set a lofty goal for yourselves. Usually, expand and learn more about the technique research class. Every time the technique research class is updated, study it repeatedly. Also, stick to fitness training every day. In addition, you can't give up on cultivation. You have to find the feeling in the circulation of spirit energy during cultivation. As long as you persevere for 10 years, you will have a mature technique research class knowledge system and the ability to try out the technique research class. With practice makes perfect, no matter how bad you are, you'll be able to research a few 1-star cultivation techniques. If you have good talent, your upper limit will be higher. Then, there's the middle strategy. While enjoying and having fun, take out 3 hours of your extracurricular time every day to study. You have to read 3 books on technique research class and thinking class every week. Also, you have to take the intermediate certification of technique research class. If you persevere for 5 years, you will have your own independent thinking in the technique research class. You can also try to do preliminary research on the technique research class. Finally, there's the worst strategy. Complete the courses assigned by the Academy on time. Occasionally, take out some free time to go to the library to read and study. You just have to ensure that you pass every test. If you encounter any problems in the technique research class, ask the professionals. Although your own ability will not improve, you can still extract the information you want from the excellence of others. I've given you 3 choices. I think you already have the answers in your hearts. Looking at the silent students, Feng Qi continued. The best strategy is very simple, but it's also very difficult. These 3 strategies will allow you to complete the personal ability assessment before graduation, but the difference in how far you can go in the future will be like heaven and earth. The best strategy will allow you to have a deep understanding of the existing technique system and draw inferences about other things from it. The middle strategy will allow you to establish an independent thinking in the technique research class. It will allow you to be handy when you research the technique research class. The worst strategy will allow you to use the answers you find to understand why the technique research class is like this. You can pass the various tests, but it's extremely difficult to start the technique research class. Hearing this, The students clearly understood what Feng Qi wanted to express. What about you, teacher? The bespectacled female student mustered her courage and asked again. Me? Eat when you want, drink when you want, and play when you want. Your talent is so good that you almost don't need to work hard. The knowledge I create will also be the content of your hard work to study and research. Although saying this might hurt the confidence of the students, he could not lose his genius persona. This was also the guarantee that he would continue to introduce new technique research class in the future. He could only reluctantly pretend to be cool for a while. Looking at the smiling Feng Qi, the students felt bitter in their hearts. They could not help but raise their middle fingers in their hearts. Indeed, comparing oneself to others would only make one angry. Chapter 99. In the next few days, apart from class, Feng Qi basically went back and forth between the library, the dormitory, and the Shuefa restaurant. There were still 2 days before the Tiger Soul concept competition, but he was very calm. After all, there was no doubt that he would be the champion. Originally, the Tiger Soul concept competition was to gather ideas and let the students of a class work together to come up with a novel cultivation system concept, and then explain the feasibility of this concept. If this concept was recognized by the Tiger Soul Institute, it could be included in the next major update of the cultivation system, and the researchers of the Tiger Soul Institute would be responsible for perfecting it. However, he had already perfected the theoretical knowledge of the human body. The students only needed to follow and learn. During the competition, they only needed to follow his instructions. It was equivalent to entering the competition with the answer to winning the championship. Therefore, he didn't need to worry about not being able to get the 8 million yuan. When he woke up this morning, Feng Qi first went to the Shuefa restaurant for breakfast before walking out of the school. The sun was shining brightly outside, and the hot air was distorted in his vision. He walked along the lake in front of the dormitory building and came to the main road with hero statues on both sides. He walked for about 10 minutes before arriving at the gate. Before he could leave the academy, a burly man in a security uniform blocked his way. Students are not allowed to go out during the special training period. Do you have a special permission slip? Hearing that, Feng Qi smiled and replied, Uncle, I'm not a student. I'm a teacher, not a student. The security guard was obviously stunned. He didn't seem to believe that such a young Feng Qi was a teacher at the school. He said, Let's check your identity. Hearing this, Feng Qi immediately nodded and then stood in front of the detection device at the school gate. After a green light swept across, the iris and face recognition were verified. Feng Qi's information appeared on the screen above the detector. In the column of his job, it was written substitute teacher. Sorry, it's my duty. After confirming Feng Qi's identity, the security guard immediately let him go. It's fine. Thank you for your hard work. Feng Qi grinned and walked out of the school gate. Then he took out his phone. After waiting for a moment, the reserved car slowly drove over. After confirming the information in the car slowly drove to the Star City Sports and Culture Square. The driver was a middle-aged man. He was very talkative along the way, and his words were full of yearning for the school life. He also said that if it wasn't for the fact that his total score was 700 points short, he would have been able to study at Star City University. They chatted along the way, and the car stopped at the south entrance of the Sports and Culture Square. After Feng's names, and the Star City Sports and Culture Square, there was an important thing to do today. As a butterfly, he was prepared to flap his wings a few times and give the 3 brats a few tight slaps on their faces, thus erasing a stumbling block that was blocking the rise of mankind. The database recorded the date and location of the establishment of the Destiny Association, but there was no specific time. Therefore, he decided to wait from the morning until the 3 brats appeared. Walking on the granite road, the road was filled with green plants. Early in the morning, there were already many people in the square. Chess, exercise, jogging. The pace of life here is much slower compared to Star City University, but it is also more leisurely. As his gaze swept across the crowd, he discovered many disabled figures. Most of the people here were veterans who retired from the front lines. They were all domain warriors who fought on the front lines, but after they were assessed as level 1 disabled, they could only choose to live the rest of their lives like this. Since they decided to become a frontline warrior, it was hard for them to live a good life. On the long and difficult road of fighting against the domain warriors, who knows how many corpses were buried in the domain warriors? Their loved ones could only pay their respects to the domain warriors. While he was lamenting, he came to the center of the square. There was a monument that was more than 10 meters tall, and it was engraved with names. Back then, it was the martyrs on the monument who fought with their comrades to build the steel city wall that blocked the invasion of the domain warriors and prevented Star City from falling. The current Star City could be said to be built with the blood, flesh, tendons, and bones of these martyrs. The residents of the city always believed that the martyrs' spirits were still protecting Star City, silently watching the development and rise of Star City, and looking forward to the arrival of victory with them. After stepping forward and bowing, Feng Chi cast his gaze into the distance. He didn't know when Naughty Brat would come, nor did he know when Naughty Brat would hold the Destiny Society's founding meeting, so he could only wander aimlessly in the square. As the sun moved, the air became hot and dry. But for him, who had his body strengthened several times in the future dream, he didn't feel any discomfort, and his forehead didn't even sweat. Walking in the cultural square, he sometimes looked at the goldfish beside the artificial lake, and sometimes walked on the cobblestone path to admire the beautiful green plants. At this moment, the taut string in his mind finally relaxed. While waiting, the sun moved to the top, and the air became abnormally hot. At this time, the uncles and aunties had all left, and only he was still wandering around the cultural square. He was like a jungler, waiting for his prey. The butterfly's mouth was still twitching, so he naturally wouldn't leave and could only continue to wait. He waited for more than half a day. The scorching sun that couldn't be looked at directly gradually moved to the west, turning into a red sun that burned the sky red. And he finally saw 3 teenagers sitting on the ground and eating snacks on the lawn in the corner of the square. In order not to kill by mistake, he took a detour and then came behind a sycamore tree behind them and began to listen to their conversation. He saw a slightly chubby teenager eating potato chips and nodded. "I think you're right. The resources should be concentrated in the hands of us elites, and then we'll be the ones to promote the development of civilization. The current social system is still too biased toward those useless people. If we integrate these resources into our hands, we'll be able to create more value." Hearing this, the teenager eating an ice cream cone hesitated. "But my father said that there is no distinction between high and low people. In history, there are many heroes who started from humble beginnings and accumulated bit by bit, and then became heroes remembered by us. If we do as you said, wouldn't we cut off the path of those civilians?" Hearing this, the third bespectacled boy immediately shook his head and retorted, "Your father's thinking is wrong. It's old thinking. I recently looked at the statistics. The probability of heroes being born from civilians is much lower than those from wealthy families. If that's the case, it's better to give all the resources to us, then the number of talents will increase." Feng Chi, who was listening to their conversation through the sycamore tree, felt the veins on his forehead throbbing. He didn't know where this group of brats came from. Before one's worldview was formed, one would believe that it was the truth after reading too much distorted content. And this kind of thinking would continue to strengthen and spread in small groups. After another round of distorted remarks, one of the teenagers stood up. "If that's the case, we will establish the Destiny Society here today. The purpose is to change this unreasonable society and unreasonable system until the day when all the resources are concentrated in the hands of the elites." Hearing this, Feng Chi was certain. The future Destiny Society was established by these 3 brats, and he couldn't stand it anymore. Butterfly's big mouth was already ready to slap him. Thinking until here, he immediately stepped out from behind the sycamore tree and came to the front of the 3 teenagers. Seeing him, the 3 teenagers were obviously shocked. After looking at the sycamore tree behind him, The leading teenager asked with a puzzled face. You want to join? F*CKU. Studying is to let you understand things, honor and disgrace, then be modest, be strict with the law, and treat others with leniency. It's not to let you think that you're the descendant of the elite class, that you know a few more words than others, that you're better than others, and that you're complacent. After saying that, Feng Chi picked up the leading teenager, took off his pants, and violently slapped him. No matter how the teenager struggled, Feng Chi didn't relent. In fact, the future growth and development of the Destiny Society basically had nothing to do with these three teenagers. They were just the early leaders of the Destiny Society, but some trends would grow rapidly once they formed. Just like the plot in the movie Tidal Wave, it was originally a simulation experiment, but in the end, it gradually became uncontrollable. It was very scary when one's understanding was changed. It was the same for the behavior of these three boys. Therefore, what he needed to do now was to eliminate the hidden danger at the source and prevent it from happening. Seeing their companion being violently beaten, the other two teenagers were dumbfounded. At the same time, they were struggling in their hearts. If they ran now, it would be too disloyal, but if they didn't run, it might be their turn later. Just as they were hesitating, Feng Chi put down the leading teenager, whose but was swollen and red. Butterfly's palm reached out to the second teenager. In the end, the three of them couldn't escape and were beaten one after another. During this period, there was resistance, but in front of Feng Chi, their resistance was meaningless, and they were beaten even more miserably. Finally, one of the teenagers couldn't help but start to cry. However, Feng Chi was not soft-hearted at all. He would still beat those who deserved to be beaten up. The butterfly's wings continued to stirring up trouble in the long river of history. Do you still want to form the Destiny Society? Looking at Feng Chi, the three boys sobbed and shook their heads, completely admitting defeat. I'll give you a chance to turn over a new leaf. If you have time, read more history books, and improve your cultural foundation. Then you will understand how stupid you are now. If I find out that you want to form some *T Destiny Society again, it won't be as simple as a spanking next time. Looking at the three who nodded obediently, Feng Chi's anger dissipated. He glared at them again and turned to leave. After Feng Chi left, they continued to sob for a while before calming down. Feeling the burning pain in their buttocks, their faces were filled with despair. Until now, they were still confused and didn't know where Feng Chi came from. They even suspected that this guy was a violent maniac who happened to pass by and didn't like them. So he found a random reason to beat them up. We can't compromise. The more difficult it is, the more we have to persevere. At this moment, the leading teenager whose face was full of tears sobbed. Hearing this, the other two turned their gazes to him. Next time, let's change to another place and time. He won't be able to find us. Hearing this, the other two teenagers hesitated, but still chose to nod. Let's go home first. Under the setting sun, the three teenagers limped and supported each other as they walked further and further away. This day was destined to be unforgettable. Chapter 100. When he returned to the academy, it was already nighttime. Feng Chi, who had not eaten for a day, first went to the Shuefu restaurant for dinner, then went straight back to the dorm. After washing up, he sat in front of the desk and turned on the computer. After beating up the three brats, he still felt a little uneasy. After all, once a person had decided on something, it was difficult to correct or change their views. It was like a large group of idiots in a certain period of time still believed that the Earth was flat and that the round Earth was a conspiracy theory. No matter how they were proven that the Earth was round, they still firmly believed in what they knew. If Magellan knew about this, he would probably be so angry that he would jump out of his coffin and start a war of words on the internet. He planned to look up information about the Destiny Society the next time he entered the Future Dream. If he found out that this organization still appeared in history, then the three brats would definitely be beaten up. There was nothing that could not be solved by a butterfly's big mouth. If there was, then he would continue to slap. Looking at the time, it was already 9 o'clock at night. For the rest of the time, he opened the notebook and began to plan for the future. The contents of the conversation with the future recorded in the notebook, or more accurately, it was more like a memo, so that his future self would not forget important information. In fact, he had also considered that many things that his future self could not do would be done by his current self in the present world. For example, the matter of carrying on the family line. In order to obtain the authority of the Star City Sanctuary, it was necessary to carry on the legacy. When the Star City Sanctuary was built, the people living in the present world were basically no longer in existence, so there was no way to access the accounts of the future residents of the sanctuary. Therefore, the account that obtained the authority could only rely on passing on the legacy from generation to generation. As for who to entrust this task to, it was obviously not as reliable as entrusting it to his own descendants. However, the problem was that he had not completed the task of carrying on the family line when he had transmigrated to the future dream several times. Although he could also carry on the mission of carrying on the family line in the present world, Feng Qi did not intend to do so. There was a huge change in the present world, and it had a huge impact on the future. After all, the future stood on the foundation of the present world and developed backward. If he were to get married and have children in the present timeline, then he would have to spend a lot of energy raising his children in every future timeline. This would undoubtedly increase the difficulty of the future timeline. In the future, every time he returned from the future dream, the first thing he had to consider was the issue of his children. That was why this mission had to be given to his future self. In the future, he would have plenty of time and opportunities to try it out. In the present, however, he had to focus on stability. He couldn't limit his future self's growth. In the dead of night, it began to rain outside. Outside the window, it was raining heavily, but Feng Qi was not affected. From time to time, he would record some thoughts in his notebook. A moment later, 3 plans for the future appeared in the notebook. Plan 1. Give an email to Mu Qing and use the message to understand why she formed the Lumin Can, as well as why she chose to massacre the city and restart the Rune Transformation Plan. Note, Mu Qing might know the secrets of the Scarlet Institute. This plan might yield unexpected results and uncover the mysteries of the Scarlet Institute. Plan 2. In the future, you won't need to come into contact with information related to the Scarlet Institute and the mysterious organization. However, you can choose to form a domain battle group and contribute to dispelling the domain field. Note, because this future timeline won't come into contact with any taboo matters, you have a high chance of living for a long time. You can personally witness and prevent things that might happen. For example, you can stop Lin Ran when he's about to release a technique. Note 2. This timeline will also require you to bear a lot of pressure. You will fall off the pedestal of a super genius. Be prepared. Plan 3. Continue to search for the werewolf among the students. He will always be a hidden danger. You have to find a way to eliminate him. Note, you can start by using the monitoring chip to find him. Note 2. While searching, you must not reveal your thoughts in this regard and attract the attention of the organization behind him. In this timeline, you should focus on stability. It will be best if you can find him, but if you can't, then forget it. After writing down the 3 plans, he carefully read through them again. Especially the 3rd plan, there were many variables. It was very likely that he wouldn't come into contact with any taboo matters, so he wouldn't attract the attention of the werewolf. Perhaps the werewolf wouldn't even bother to install a monitoring chip on him. After all, there were plenty of domain battle groups. The domain battle group he formed didn't seem to be a threat to the mysterious organization in the dark. Previously, he had been targeted by the mysterious organization twice and sent to the guillotine because he had started investigating the mysterious organization. Furthermore, the werewolf among the students had found out from him that he already knew about the cancerous organization hidden in human society. At this time, the mysterious organization was already at risk of being exposed, so they decided to kill him. Therefore, the 3rd plan had many variables. It was very likely that they wouldn't be able to find the spy until the end. It wasn't until dawn that Feng Qi closed his notebook and lay down on his bed. Ever since he had obtained the cheat that allowed him to travel to the future, he discovered that he seemed to have lost the ability to fall asleep quickly. He closed his eyes and listened to the sound of raindrops hitting the window. However, countless messy pieces of information were surging in his mind. Through the database of the future, he had already learned of many secrets hidden in history and reality. However, the path ahead was still shrouded in black fog. He couldn't see where the exit for humanity was. While his thoughts were running wild, drowsiness overcame him. Perhaps it was because what he thought in the day was what he dreamed of at night. A smile gradually appeared on his face as he slept. In the dream, he had challenged all the domain creatures by himself. At this time, he had thousands of prefix titles, and each of them had risen to several hundred levels. Facing the domain creatures that pounced on him dauntlessly, he didn't even need to do anything in a flash. All the domain creatures in his line of sight exploded and died. Then, they turned into a bloody mist that surged toward him and was absorbed by his body. No matter how powerful the domain creatures were, they weren't a match for him. When he swung his fist, even space couldn't withstand his strength and was distorted from the pressure. However, he had the ability to be undying and indestructible. No matter how serious his injuries were, they would heal instantly. Even if only a single cell was left alive, he would be able to be reborn instantly. He also had many other powerful abilities. For example, the ability to jump through space. He could easily tear through space and jump through it. He could go wherever he wanted. Domain creatures wouldn't be able to catch up to him. Or he could create a black hole with a wave of his hand, sucking in large numbers of domain creatures and turning them into dust. At this moment, he could pluck the sun, moon, and stars with a wave of his hand. He could see through the future and the past with a glance. He could be said to be invincible in the world. Who dares to fight me? Just as Feng Qi was getting braver and braver, he suddenly felt a chill on his back. He turned around and realized that Xiaohei had appeared behind him at some point in time. While feeling shocked, he immediately turned around. At this moment, Xiaohei turned into a black fog that enveloped him. While his vision was blocked, he heard Xiaohei's cold voice ring in his ears. Die! He almost blurted out, "Spare me, hero." Suddenly, he realized that it was just a false alarm. Sitting on the bed, Feng Qi was silent for a long time before a smile slowly appeared on his face. Although it was just a dream, the first half was indeed satisfying. He also looked forward to such a day in the future. At that time, he would be so powerful that he could calmly face any threat or challenge. Chapter 101. There was still one day left before the Tiger Soul concept competition began. This also caused Feng Qi to have 3 extra classes in Cultivation Method Class 1. Each class was 1.5 hours long. For this year's Tiger Soul concept competition, even Bai Fuxing felt that Star City University would definitely win the competition. After all, the concept of a human spirit was enough to affect the modern cultivation system and fill in a huge gap. The concept competition had yet to begin, but there were already a few research institutes that received the relevant information online and called to inquire. Regarding this, he could only say that he would reveal it during the concept competition. Therefore, he decided to let Feng Qi teach a few more classes to deepen the students' understanding of the concept of a human spirit. When the time came, many research institutes would pay attention to the competition. Therefore, Feng Qi was very busy that day. Other than eating time, he was basically in class. The concept competition was held in a class format. Each student was responsible for explaining a part of the concept and then scoring it online. If they advanced to the final segment would be scored by the Tiger Soul Institute's judging panel. During this period, every student had to participate. Realizing that their class might be recorded in the annals of history, the students were all unusually excited and full of energy. After Feng Qi's class, they did not relax. They held their notes and quickly reviewed. After a busy day, Feng Qi arrived at Xuefa restaurant. He was hungry and took a full plate of food before sitting down at the North Corner Village table. At this time, Mu Qing had already arrived and was eating heartily. However, Lin Ran was nowhere to be seen. After greeting Mu Qing, he also began to eat heartily. At this time, his energy progress bar had reached 99.2%. He was only 0. 8% away from entering the future dream again. After his body's strength was increased, he could obtain about 0.5% energy when he was completely full. Therefore, he felt that he could reach the goal tonight if he gave it his all. For dinner, he chose a lot of high-calorie food, such as peanut butter, cheese-baked steak, and all kinds of fried food. As long as it contained fat, sugar, and high calories, it was his first choice. During the meal, Lin Ran came with a plate. As usual, the food on his plate was not enough to fill the gaps between Feng Qi and Mu Qing's teeth. He came to the dining table and sat down sideways. After glancing at the stacked food on Feng Qi's plate, a look of shock appeared on his face. "Brother Qi, are you challenging senior sister?" Faced with the question, Feng Qi rolled his eyes and swallowed the food in his mouth. "Today's class is too tiring. Eat more to nourish your body. Be careful not to overdo it. It's too unhealthy for you to eat like this. It's all high-calorie food. I feel full just by looking at it. It's okay to have a meal once in a while. Just eat your food." Feng Qi continued to eat. With his strong digestive ability, he did not need to worry about the burden of an unhealthy diet on his body because the excess calories would be absorbed by the energy replenishment progress bar. Although eating like this was too greasy, his body could handle it. 15 minutes before the meal, the three of them did not speak and ate separately. After that, Feng Qi's eating speed slowed down, while Lin Ran was already full and entered a state of no desire. At this time, the three of them talked about what they had seen and heard today. However, it was basically Feng Qi and Lin Ran talking. Mu Qing rarely interjected. However, compared to her silence in the past, Mu Qing had changed greatly. Half an hour later, Feng Qi looked at the 0.13% on the progress interface with a slightly ferocious expression. He could no longer eat anything. In fact, he was about to vomit. However, seeing that his energy progress bar was about to be filled, how could he give up? "Brother Qi, are we going to the library to study next?" In the face of Lin Ran's question, Feng Qi shook his head. Then he stood up with his plate. "No, I'm resting tonight. I'll go get some desserts. You can still eat?" Lin Ran was shocked. Men have two stomachs. One is for eating, and the other is for eating desserts. With that, Feng Qi walked to the dining area. "Isn't that used to describe women?" Lin Ran couldn't help but mutter. After Feng Qi walked away, Lin Ran looked at Mu Qing and whispered, "Maybe it's because of this guy's ego. Perhaps this is a man's inexplicable pride. Senior sister can occasionally let him win." Mu Qing was stunned when she heard that. Then, she slowly raised her head and explained, "We're not eating. We're not competing to see who can eat more. His behavior already proves that he's secretly competing. Otherwise, how can we explain why he's eating so desperately?" Looking at Lin Ran's serious analysis, Mu Qing clearly believed him. Usually, when they ate together, they had a rough understanding of Feng Qi's appetite. There was clearly a reason why he still wanted to eat despite eating so much today. Thinking of this, Mu Qing looked hesitant. This was because going easy on him meant that he wouldn't be able to eat his fill. It was definitely a kind of mental and physical torture. At this moment, Feng Qi returned. After putting down his plate, he looked at Lin Ran and said, "Senior sister, don't lie to me. Don't try to fool senior sister. I heard everything just now. I ate so much because I was researching a new cultivation method. How did it become a competition with senior sister? You're too imaginative. I know my limits in this aspect." New cultivation technique? If you're talking about this, I won't be sleepy anymore. Hurry up and tell me about the new cultivation technique. I'm not free. With that, Feng Qi lowered his head and started a new round of eating. Finally, after 10 minutes, the energy progress bar in his eyes reached 100%. As for the remaining food on his plate, he put it all on Mu Qing's plate based on the principle of not wasting anything. After saying goodbye to Mu Qing, he and Lin Ran stood up and left the Shuefu restaurant. Lin Ran chose to go to the library to study while he walked straight to the dormitory building. Since his energy had been replenished, he decided to enter the dream again and go on a killing spree. After returning to the dormitory, Feng Qi first drank 2 bottles of wine before lying on the bed. In the midst of his drunken stupor, his mind gradually emptied. The moment he opened his eyes, a cold wind blew across his face. Looking up, the blood moon was in the sky and the dark clouds were rolling. The scene in the future dream had not changed at all. However, he was already mentally prepared. After all, the plan he left for the future this time was mainly stable. Perhaps there had been some changes in history, but it was obviously wishful thinking to change the outcome of human civilization. After looking around, he smiled and said, "Narrator, it's time to go to work. I'm taking a day off." "Thank you, boss." Feng Qi was speechless. No thanks. He didn't take the narrator's reply seriously. He already knew the narrator's habits and knew that the narrator would definitely jump out when it was time to give a hint. Hansen took a step forward and kicked Little Can's head away. He then strode towards the underground shelter. After a while, he entered the underground shelter and stood in front of the data control panel. After starting the database, a series of codes flashed across the screen, followed by the familiar options panel. With a perfect plan in mind, he first opened the search list and entered Vivian's name. After filtering, the relevant information appeared. Vivian, human trader, age, 539 years old, cause of death. Confidential information, lifetime achievements, honor director of the genetics department of the Scarlet Institute, cancelled. Former honorary vice president of the Academy of Science, cancelled. S-Class Human Elite Medal, cancelled. Outstanding Contribution to Human Development Award, cancelled. Research results. Confidential information, evaluation. In the early days, Vivian was a pioneer on the path of human development. She had many achievements in the field of biological science and made indelible contributions to the rise of human civilization. But in her later years, she was mentally controlled by a transcendent domain creature and completely sided with the domain creature. She secretly planned to destroy human civilization. Fortunately, she was discovered in time. Otherwise, it would have caused an irreparable disaster. After reading the evaluation of Vivian from the future, Feng Qi's face was slightly solemn. He no longer completely believed in history and always maintained an attitude of half-believing and half-doubting. But if the information displayed in Vivian's database was true, it would explain why there was a transcendent domain creature in the Scarlet Institute. Because Vivian was completely controlled and the entire Scarlet Institute was infiltrated by a transcendent domain creature. But he had new doubts in his mind. If Vivian was on the side of the transcendent domain creature, then why did she create the suction cup and release the suction cup to protect Star City when the city was about to be covered by the domain? From this perspective, Vivian was clearly on the side of human civilization. With limited information, he didn't know what the answer was for the time being. He could only wait until the bottom line was open to find out the details. As for why he didn't choose the bottom line this time, it was because he felt that the secret of the Scarlet Institute might be found in Mu Qing's email. He closed Vivian's information page and entered his name into the search list. After filtering, his detailed information appeared on the screen. Feng Qi, hero of the era, age, 32 years old, cause of death, accidental death date of death, March 14th, 2037, lifetime achievements, honor Star City University's S-Class Outstanding Graduate, A-Class Human Elite Medal, Outstanding Contribution to Human Development Award, research results, gymnastics training version 2.0, Tiger Fist, body tempering technique, heaven and earth meditation, soul catcher, creator of the human seed concept, cultivation system version 3. 76 update participant, comment. A hero destined to be remembered by history. In the early days, Feng Qi was a super genius in everyone's eyes. His future was limitless, and his talent was known as the strongest in history. All of humanity had high hopes for him. During his time as a substitute teacher in Star City Academy, he had nurtured many outstanding talents and contributed greatly to the rise of human civilization. His contributions were indispensable, but Feng Qi's talent didn't shine all the time. As he grew older, his talents seemed to have been exhausted, and he couldn't create anything new. However, history would remember his contributions, and his statue would forever be erected in the Star City Academy for the younger generations to look up to and admire. In the netizens' comment section, They were all filled with flower-like emojis and praises. But Feng Qi wasn't happy at all. Accidental death? Who are you trying to fool? Bah, I don't believe in punctuation. If I'm not wrong, I should have been assassinated by a domain transcendent being in the future. Although he said that, he had many doubts in his heart. In this timeline, although he was brilliant in the early stages, his performance wasn't good in the later stages. He only formed the Breaking Dawn domain battle team. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have been targeted by the evil forces lurking in the dark. But how could he believe that it was a sudden death? Is there a possibility that you accidentally obtained a lot of important information, so you had to die? I'm not sure, but I can't rule out this possibility. This time, the information in the future database had changed a lot. It was obviously difficult to find the key information through the character information. Therefore, he didn't plan to use the third time to check the character information. Instead, he entered his email address on the search page. After waiting for a few seconds, the private email page popped up. But when he opened the message box, he was dumbfounded. The message box was empty. Damn, if I'm not wrong. After you gave your private email to Mu Qing, your secret was completely exposed. Maybe this is also the reason why you died suddenly in the future. So, it's very likely that there are spies planted by the evil forces around Mu Qing. They also received the information you gave Mu Qing. After hearing the explanation, Feng Qi clenched his fists and slammed the control panel. F***CK. Chapter 102. There was no message left in the private mailbox. Feng Qi felt that there was only one reason that could explain this. Just as the narrator said, after the future him gave his private mailbox to Mu Qing exposed the mailbox, causing the contents of the mailbox to be wiped out by the evil forces. But then a doubt appeared in his mind. Then why didn't the evil forces leave a message in the mailbox to mislead his judgment? Perhaps the evil forces lurking in human civilization don't believe that you can travel through time. After all, traveling through time is too mysterious. If you didn't experience it yourself, you wouldn't believe it. But because there was a lot of information related to them in the mailbox, they chose to delete it and kill you, who knew the secret. After listening to the narrator's explanation, he nodded, because he thought so too. Otherwise, it was impossible for there to be no message in the mailbox. Even if Mu Qing didn't leave a message, the future him should have left a lot of messages. He thought that he could get a lot of useful information from the future dream, but he didn't expect the most important private mailbox to be deleted. This also caused the clues to be completely cut off. Now he couldn't communicate with the future to find out what important information he obtained in the future. And the reason why Mu Qing formed the Lumin Can and massacred the city. After a moment of silence, he decided to use the remaining time to look through the historical database and find other useful information from a different perspective. Especially information related to the Lumin Can formed by Mu Qing. Maybe he could find clues from it, or even find the evil forces lurking around Mu Qing. He closed the mailbox page, entered the keywords in the search bar, and then the screen was filled with information. People in the future had a lot of comments about the Dawn Rebels. There were also many history experts on the internet who gave their own interpretation of the Dawn Rebels. While looking through, he found that the strength of the Dawn Rebels was not only reflected in Mu Qing. In fact, among the people who followed her, there was no lack of talented powerhouses. Mu Qing only represented the ceiling of individual combat power. It was precisely because of this that the Lumin Can, which was filled with talents, was able to contend against the entire world. During this period of time, their attacks were unstoppable. If it was just Mu Qing alone, no matter how strong she was, she would not be able to do anything. The 12 core members of Lumin Can were known as the 1 demon, 3 evil, and 8 heavenly kings. Of course, the demon was Mu Qing. She was known as the great demon king of history. She had personally created a period of turbulence known as the Dark Age. Regarding Mu Qing's battle prowess, the future people's evaluation was that she was the strongest in her era and also one of the top 10 strongest in human history. As for Mu Qing's ranking in the top 10, there was a lot of debate on the internet. Just like Guan Gong against Qin Xiong, without having fought in the same era, there was no way to compare them. However, Most people still believe that there was no doubt that Mu Qing would be ranked in the top 3 in history. As for the 3 evil, they refer to the 3 people with the highest status in Lu Min Can apart from Mu Qing. The 3 of them were the absolute core of Lu Min Can. They helped Mu Qing manage and command Lu Min Can's development and foreign wars. They were the leader of the Sky Pillar Battle Group, Qin Shiyong. The Sky Pillar Battle Group that he personally created was originally one of the top 100 battle groups. However, after Mu Qing formed Lu Min Can, he led his battle group to join and become a part of it. During this time, he gave advice and suggestions to Lu Min Can's development and made many contributions. He himself was also a scavenger. The second person was the leader of the original scavenger hunting organization, Assassin Long Qinyan. He was one of the earliest people to follow Mu Qing to form Lu Min Can. He was mainly responsible for Lu Min Can's various assassinations and intelligence gathering. He was also one of the absolute cores of Lu Min Can. As for the last person of the 3 evil, no useful information could be found on the internet. They only knew that she was a woman, and her name was Murakami. There was no other information about her. She was also the new leader of Lu Min Can after Mu Qing's death. She gathered the scattered members of Lu Min Can and launched a second counterattack against the Human Alliance. Just from this point alone, her ability and background couldn't be simple. Otherwise, how could the other 2 be willing to submit and respect her? Feng Qi couldn't help but be curious about the mysterious Murakami. In order to figure out Murakami's identity and background, he immediately opened the search list and began to search for information about Murakami. After filtering, the relevant information appeared on the screen. In the photo, Murakami was wearing a standard military uniform. Her face was delicate, and her appearance was sweet. When she smiled, she gave off a very sunny feeling. Based on her appearance alone, she looked more like a playful girl next door. It was impossible to associate her with the 3 demons of dawn, who made people pale at the mere mention of her name. Murakami, rebel leader. Age, unknown cause of death. Unknown lifetime achievements. None introduction. After Mu Qing's death, she took over the Dawn Rebels and became the new leader. She continued to carry out Mu Qing's ideology and wantonly slaughtered everywhere. She had an irreversible impact on the development of human civilization. However, when the Dawn Rebels were about to be destroyed, Murakami suddenly disappeared. Since then, there's been no news about her. Even now, no one knows where she went. After checking Murakami's information, Feng Qi felt a headache coming on. He didn't expect Murakami's information to be completely unknown in the database. This situation had never happened even to Lu Yu. Lu Yu was mysterious, but at least he was from the Lu family and was a descendant of the Lu family that mysteriously disappeared. The cause of Mu Qing's death was kept secret, but through the database, he could find out that she was a rune-modified person who graduated from Star City University. However, Murakami's information was a complete mystery on the internet. As for her origin, there were a lot of speculations on the internet without any evidence. Some people thought that Murakami was adopted by Mu Qing and was personally trained to be her successor. At the same time, she was the only rune-modified person who perfectly fused with a rune crystal after her. Some people also thought that Murakami was actually a transcendent being. She had the same idea as Mu Qing to destroy the world. So she joined the Dawn Rebels and was willing to assist Mu Qing to strengthen the Dawn Rebels. Therefore, after Mu Qing died, Murakami took over the flag of Dawn and continued to carry out Mu Qing's idea of destroying the world. There were a lot of speculations about Murakami's identity on the internet, but there was no conclusive evidence to prove Murakami's true origin. It was as if this person appeared out of thin air in history. Seeing this, Feng Qi suddenly had a guess in his mind. Could it be that this mysterious Murakami came from the path to heaven? Therefore, it was as if she appeared out of thin air and there was no information about her. The reason why Lu Yu's identity was known was because he came from the mysterious missing Lu family. If the Lu family was removed, then Lu Yu also seemed to have appeared out of thin air. If Murakami came from the path to heaven, then a new problem appeared. Why would Murakami, who came from the path to heaven, helped Mu Qing form the Lumin Can and take over the Lumin Can after Mu Qing's death to fight against the entire human race. What kind of place was the path to heaven? He couldn't figure out the reason, so he began to search the database for information about the war between the Lumin Can and the human camp. However, the videos of the war between the humans and the Lumin Can on the internet were all restricted information. Without an account, he couldn't view them. As he continued to search for information about the war, a video caught his attention. Our civilization has reached a dead end. The frequency of domain invasions is increasing. Our future is in danger. Confused, he clicked on the video. The video was of a city from afar. The sun was shining brightly in the sky, and it was peaceful. Just as he was wondering what this video meant, several pillars of light suddenly descended from the sky. These pillars of light rapidly expanded after landing on the ground. Then, humanoid domain creatures continuously walked out of the pillars of light. These creatures that appeared with the domain creatures immediately started massacring the residents of the city. After a while, the city turned into a sea of fire. The tall buildings collapsed, and everything was in ruins. At the end of the video, the domain creatures completely enveloped the city. The city had been reduced to ruins, and it had lost its former prosperity and vitality. What made him feel that something was wrong was that in the first pillar of light that descended from the sky, not only were there domain invading domain creatures, there were also humans. These humans resisted and started a life and death battle with the domain creatures that descended on the city. However, they still failed in the end. In the end, these figures disappeared along with the pillars of light in the city that had been reduced to ruins. Seeing this scene, he instantly thought of the mysterious path to heaven. Could it be that these figures that came to help came from the path to heaven like Liu Yu? They appeared to resist the invasion of the domain creatures when the humans were in danger. If this was the case, there was one question that could not be explained. Why did those disappeared powerhouses go to the path to heaven and only appear to help when the humans were in danger? Why didn't they join the major domain armies and fight on the front lines? Have you thought a question? Where did the domain creatures come from? Why did they descend on Earth from time to time? Where's the source of all this? Hearing this, his heart trembled. You mean that the path to heaven is the front line against the domain invasions, and those disappeared powerhouses were sent to the source of the disaster to fight against the domain creatures? I'm not sure, but from the current information, there is indeed such a possibility. If it's really like what you said, why is the information about the path to heaven hidden from the world? How would I know? I'm just a heartless notification robot. I can't think. My brain cells are almost burned out from being with you. Feng Qi was speechless. Following the prompts of the narration, a guess appeared in his mind. Perhaps those powerhouses going to the path to heaven to fight against the source of the disaster was a secret operation that could not be known by the domain creatures lurking in human society, so it had to be kept a secret. This would explain why powerhouses mysteriously disappeared from modern society from time to time. It would also explain why no information about the path to heaven could be found on the internet. It would also explain why the mysterious Murakami suddenly disappeared when Lumin Kin was about to be destroyed. Perhaps she had already returned to the path to heaven at that time. It would also explain why a mysterious force came to help through the pillar of light when the domain invasions occurred. But a new question immediately appeared. Where was the path to heaven? Could it be that the secret organization really did not know about the existence of the path to heaven? If there really was a mysterious place like the path to heaven that did not exist in this world, then did that mean that after the world was destroyed, the path to heaven might still be left behind? At this time, he urgently wanted to know about the path to heaven. As long as he found the path to heaven, it seemed that many problems would be solved. Chapter 103. After looking up the information on Lumin Can, Feng Qi had more unanswered questions. Who was Murakami? Why did Mu Qing train her? Why did she become the second leader of Lumin Can? Did she come from the heavenly path? He had no way of knowing this information, so he could only choose to put it aside. At the same time, he made a decision. The next time he entered the future dream, he would choose the Scarlet Institute's undercover. Perhaps he could find the answer from Wei Wei, who had lived for more than 500 years. Now that he had used up the 3 times he looked up the information, he decided to use the remaining time to learn techniques and research techniques. He wanted to leave more things for his future self. After all, every time he was in the future, he was too miserable. If he learned more, he didn't have to teach it when he returned to the real world. It could also be used as capital for his future development. In other words, as long as he learned enough, his future self could dig out the knowledge in his brain and continue to show off. As long as his lifespan was short enough, he might not have the lack of stamina that was mentioned in the future evaluation. I thank you on behalf of your future self. You are a King good comrade. Feng Qi was speechless. After closing the search page, he opened the technique library. He first chose a 3-star spirit cultivation technique and began to look through it. After entering the learning state, time passed by quickly. Just like some people who like to read novels and play games, when they entered the immersive state, their concept of time would become blurry. The 3-star technique he chose this time was more complex than the 2-star technique he chose before. After he finished reading it twice, more than 4 hours had passed. In the remaining time, he opened the Technique Research Foundation class and began to study. What surprised him was that the 3rd class didn't pick up the content of the 2nd class. He was confused at the beginning. After he clicked on the first lesson, it was just as he had expected. The content of the Cultivation Method Research Thinking Basic lesson had undergone many changes. There was more content. These changes brought a smile to his face. At least after working hard for so long, the development of the human cultivation system was influenced by him. Compared to the first time he entered the future dreamscape, the cultivation system in the future database was much more mature and complete. Therefore, he chose to start learning again from the first lesson. Time passed quickly. After an unknown period of time, the voice of the narrator sounded in his mind. Young friend, danger is approaching. I advise you to leave as soon as possible. Why are you calling me little friend? I'm cosplaying as a cheat grandpa in a novel. I'm accompanying the main character and guiding him to grow stronger. Feng Qi was speechless. While giving the narrator the middle finger in his heart, he walked towards room 005 in the underground square. After kicking open the door, just as he expected, the room was filled with all kinds of cold weapons. Although these weapons were not very convenient to use, they were still very lethal. It was better to have one for self-defense than none. After looking around, he picked up a black mace. This was because the mace was the ideal weapon that was closest to the Bone Club. Han's Sun did not linger, and he quickly left the underground shelter. The outside world was like the hell depicted in movies and TV series. Everything was dark and silent. Turning his head to the west, he could vaguely see a mountain-like figure standing there motionlessly amidst the lightning and thunder. At first, he thought that it was a mountain covered by dark clouds, but now he knew that it was an extremely powerful domain creature. He did not have the strength to go west. Randomly exploring would only cause him to lose his life. As for the north and south, although he did not know what was there, since the narrator reminded him to go east, it was better to listen to it. The narrator was just sharp-tongued and would not really harm him. Walking along the path full of bones, he only needed to use the mace to kill the living dead and death worms he encountered. The power of this black mace was astonishing. When he waved it, a cloud of black spirit energy would cover the surface and burst forth with power when it hit the target. During this period, the narrator would also remind him from time to collect a lot of spirit plants along the way. These spirit plants would be the long-term protection of the sucker against Xiaohei. After a few hours of travel, an abandoned city appeared in his line of sight. Compared to the past, this city seemed to have expanded, and the height of the buildings had obviously increased. The only thing that remained unchanged was that this city was still in ruins. Under the ravages of time and domain creatures, its prosperity faded away, leaving behind only ruins and a history of its existence. After arriving at the ruins of the city, he began to become vigilant. The domain creatures here might not be very strong, but it was still unknown whether he could fight against them, even if he had obtained a very powerful blood source ability. After exploring for about 100 meters, He crawled over the road blocked by the wreckage of the buildings. What appeared in front of him was a road full of cracks. The shop signs on both sides were upside down, and the cables were exposed. Not far away, an ape-like domain creature was looking at him. It was about 8 meters tall, covered in white hair, and there was a tuft of golden hair on its forehead. Its 2 arms were very thick, completely disproportionate to its body. There was an inverted, triangular red rune crystal embedded on its forehead. After a short exchange of glances, the gorilla-like domain creature roared at him and opened its mouth to reveal symmetrical fangs that were half a finger long. Narrator, can you help me observe his abilities and see if I can win? Feng Qi said nervously as he gripped his mace. A real man shouldn't be afraid. Kill it. Hearing the narrator's answer, he decided to fight one-on-one with a real man and not run. At this moment, the gorilla-like domain creature jumped 4 to 5 meters high from the ground. Its 2 thick arms were like 2 battle axes, smashing fiercely toward his head. Seeing this, he decisively jumped to the side. Boom! The arms of the domain creature hit the spot where Feng Qi was originally standing, creating a crater in the ground. Instantly, gravel flew everywhere. Looking at Feng Qi, who dodged the attack, the domain creature turned around and roared again. Roar your mother! At this moment, Feng Qi stood up, swung the mace, and slammed it on the arm of the domain creature. Along with the circulation of the black spirit Qi on the mace, the sudden burst of power instantly sent it flying and smashed into a shop. The shop, which was already unable to bear the weight, immediately fell down and buried it in the billowing smoke and dust. But he didn't let his guard down. Just as he thought, with a dull roar, the gorilla-like domain creature jumped up from the pile of rubble and smashed its huge fist toward his head. Feng Qi decisively chose to dodge. But what he didn't expect was that the gorilla-like domain creature's move was just a feint. When he jumped up, it suddenly clenched its fist and grabbed at him. Feng Qi, who was caught off guard, was immediately caught. Feeling the pressure all over his body, he knew that he had no choice but to use his ultimate move. He originally wanted to use the blood essence as a trump card. Unless it was a last resort, it was better not to use it. After all, he might still encounter other domain creatures on the way to find the suckers. But now that he was caught, if he didn't use his trump card, he would be gone. Thinking of this, his consciousness pierced into his heart. Dong, dong, dong. His heartbeat suddenly sped up, and a blood-colored aura quickly spread all over his body. The muscles on his body grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. This huge force pushed away the pressure of the domain creature's palm, allowing him to fall directly to the ground. When the blood essence in his heart was completely sucked dry, Feng Qi's height grew to more than 2 meters. The surface of his body was congealed into blocks of muscles, and his thick arms were comparable to the gorilla-like domain creatures. Big muscles bully appears, everyone cheers. At this moment, he felt that his entire body was surging with power, and he could kill a cow with a punch. Looking at the shocked domain creature, he couldn't help but grab its right hand, and then said with a sinister smile, "Brother, do you want to arm wrestle?" As soon as he finished speaking, his arms suddenly exerted force, and he lifted it over his shoulder, then smashed it heavily onto the ground. The domain creature immediately roared, wanting to resist Feng Qi's strength, but Feng Qi didn't give it any chance at all. After all, the duration of the blood essence state was limited. If he couldn't end the battle quickly, he would be killed instead. Thinking of this, he raised his leg and kicked the domain creature that was struggling to get up to the ground. His right hand that was grabbing it exerted force again, and then he continued to throw it left and right. The suppression of pure strength made the gorilla-like domain creature unable to resist at all. At this moment, Feng Qi was crazily venting the surging power in his body. After a while, 2 pits appeared on the ground on both sides of him. The gorilla-like domain creature was also on the verge of death. It obviously didn't have much strength to resist. After picking up the mace on the ground, he decided to end the battle. At this moment, his figure leaped high into the air, and the mace that he suddenly swung down fell through the wind, smashing heavily onto the domain creature's face. Crack! The sound of bones breaking rang out, and a mixture of red and white liquid splattered everywhere. The gorilla-like domain creature's body twitched for a while before it stopped moving. At the same time, a cloud of blood mist appeared from its body and entered Feng-Chi's body. Opening the attribute panel, he found that he had another prefix title and a passive ability. Brute Force, LV1. Physical fitness increases by 5%. Damage dealt to the target in close combat will be accompanied by force damage. Force damage comes from one's own chi and blood. The stronger one's chi and blood, the stronger the force attached to the attack. He was one step closer to the status of the thousands of prefix titles in the dream. He couldn't help but grin. Good fellow, another close combat ability. This is definitely F** King Heaven's will. You're destined to become a muscular warrior. Next time, I'll pick a spell-type domain creature to kill. I still prefer long-range attacks, similar to the psychokinesis of the blood-red eyes. If I can use my brain, I won't use my hands. Hearing the voiceover's ridicule, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. Remember what you said to Lin Ran. What did I say? Give up the stubborn thoughts in your heart and accept the choice of your talent. Feng-Chi was speechless. Back then, when he wanted to persuade Lin Ran to give up on the path of cultivation method research, he did say this sentence. The purpose was to hope that Lin Ran would accept the choice of his talent and continue on the path of cultivation method research instead of unrealistic pursuit of cultivation method research. He didn't expect that this sentence would become a reason for the voiceover to ridicule him. At this moment, he suddenly thought of something. Wait, how do you know what I said in reality? Do you also exist in reality? What are you talking about? Why don't I understand? I think you must have misunderstood something. Hearing Feng-Chi's words, the voiceover immediately denied it 3 times. Chapter 104. The narrator's denial made Feng-Chi even more certain of one thing. He had always existed in reality, but he had never spoken. Please don't speculate maliciously. Your distrust of me makes me extremely disappointed in you. Feng-Chi was speechless. He chose to ignore the narrator's denial. Since the interface in the future dream could appear in reality, the narrator could also appear in reality. After all, the narrator wasn't a physical body. Logically speaking, he should be able to bring it out of the dream world. Perhaps the narrator was lazy and deliberately did not appear. Stop your malicious imagination. Do I look like a system that doesn't speak for the sake of being lazy? Do I need a few days off? Too similar. Ite. He lowered his head and looked at the orangutan domain creature. He suddenly felt that it was a waste. If the sucker was here, it would definitely be a good snack. However, he was still very far from the abandoned hospital where the sucker might be. It was obviously impossible to bring it there. He could only choose to give up. Not long after the battle ended, the muscles on his body began to collapse, turning into a bloody mist that dissipated with the wind. As a sense of weakness welled up in his heart, he continued on his way. After using his blood source ability, he would not be able to fight against a domain creature if he encountered one again. Therefore, he was extremely careful as he moved forward. If there was terrain that he needed to cross, he would not rashly show his head. Instead, he would observe the situation before taking action. During this period, he even climbed up a tall building to confirm Xiao Hei's current location. Just as he had expected, Xiao Hei's love for him still did not abandon him. At this moment, he was chasing after him stubbornly. This made him feel very helpless. Xiao Hei was like a dogskin plaster. He would track him wherever he went. He could not beat him in a fight, and his speed was not as fast as Xiao Hei's. He was even more ferocious than the robots in the movie Terminator. On the way to the abandoned hospital, he encountered a few more domain creatures. However, he was already prepared. He decisively took a detour after discovering them from afar. Adhering to the principle of cherishing life and staying away from domain monsters, although he was cautious along the way, there were no accidents. After a few hours of traveling, he finally arrived at the abandoned hospital. Looking up, he saw a skinny figure squatting on the roof of the abandoned hospital from afar. At this moment, The figure was looking up at the blood moon motionlessly. The moment he saw the narration, he heaved a sigh of relief and felt a sense of security. Automatic absorption weapon discovered. Pick it up. Feng Qi was speechless. Since he had discovered the suction cup, he did not need to worry about whether there were domain creatures nearby. When he got closer, he looked up at the suction cup and shouted, "Sucker, come down." Hearing his shouts, the sucker slowly lowered its head and then jumped down from the roof. After landing on the ground, the suction cup quickly approached Feng Qi and knocked him to the ground. Then it automatically attached itself to his chest. He rubbed the head of the sucker, and a smile appeared on his face. Absorption automatic combat weapon has been equipped. Please drip blood on it to claim ownership. Otherwise, the weapon may escape. Ignoring the narrator's antics, he stood up and walked into the abandoned hospital with the suction cup. There was a metal door in the abandoned hospital, but he could not find any way to open it. However, just because he could not open it did not mean that the suction cup could not open it. He felt that with the suction cup's ability, it could easily open this door made of an unknown material with one punch. Then, he would be able to enter and spy on the secrets of the Scarlet Institute's underground base. The abandoned hospital was overgrown with weeds, and even the walls were covered with moss. He was too lazy to look around for the secret door, so he immediately said, "Narrator, find the location of the secret door." Ding! About 20 meters away from the left corridor, a metal door has been discovered. Following the narrator's instructions, he came to the left corridor and pulled out the weeds nearby. Sure enough, he saw the familiar pitch-black secret door. At this moment, there was a flickering light in the middle of the secret door. Standing next to the secret door, he gathered his strength and threw a punch at the door. However, this punch did not even make the secret door make sound. Instead, it hurt so much that he grimaced. "Host, please have a clear understanding of your own strength. Don't do ridiculous things that insult your intelligence. If other systems see this, I can't afford to lose face." Feng Qi was speechless. After his attempt failed, he looked at the suction cup lying in front of his chest. He picked her up and placed her on the ground. He pointed at the secret door and made a knocking gesture. "Suction cup, smash it." The suction cup looked at Feng Qi in a daze, as if she did not understand the meaning of this gesture. "Swing your fist and smash this door." As he spoke, Feng Qi demonstrated again. This time, the suction cup finally reacted. She slowly raised her fist and clenched it in front of Feng Qi's expectant eyes. Then, she copied Feng Qi's previous demonstration and gently knocked on the secret door. "Ha ha ha ha. I can't hold it in anymore. Nice suction cup. It's perfect. I give you full points." Feng Qi was speechless. Looking at the stunned suction cup, he did not have the strength to complain. He took a deep breath, clenched his fist, stood up, and decided to give the suction cup a real demonstration. This time, he did not hold back and punched the secret door. Then, his expression involuntarily twisted. "Suction cup, do as I say. Smash it." After staring at Feng Qi for a few seconds, the suction cup did not copy him. Instead, it pounced on his chest and sucked again. Excellent. Feng Qi was speechless. The suction cup's reaction made him very troubled. So, what should he do to make the suction cup smash open the secret door? While thinking, he gradually had an idea. Usually, when the suction cup entered combat mode, it was because he was attacked. Therefore, he could use this as a starting point. After he had an idea, he began to look for small bugs, small spiders, and other domain-derived creatures nearby. After searching for a while, his efforts paid off. He found a completely red insect. This insect was the size of a pinky finger and was completely red. When he caught it, he was very surprised by how hard it struggled. He almost lost his grip on it. Bringing the blood-red bug to the secret door, he put the bug down and extended his finger towards it. Just as he thought, the little worm opened its mouth and bit down, biting off a piece of rotten flesh from his finger. At this moment, the suction cup was activated. Instantly, specks of starlight appeared in its eyes and gradually turned into a rotating, dazzling starry sky. However, the suction cup did not directly punch the red insect. Instead, it pushed Feng Qi's hand away and then suddenly punched down. Before the fist even touched the door, the blood-red bug that was lying on the door had already been crushed into pieces by the scorching airflow. When the fist made contact with the secret door, the shock wave instantly sent Feng Qi flying a few meters away. The decaying walls nearby could not withstand the pressure and collapsed one after another. In the blink of an eye, the place was turned into ruins. At this moment, Feng Qi could only curl up and cover his head in defense. He was afraid that he would be crushed to death by the falling stones. This was the first time he felt the power of the suction cup's punch at such a close distance. He was extremely shocked. He finally understood why the domain-derived creatures nearby could not withstand the suction cup's punch. This punch was like a missile hitting a target. Just the aftershock alone was full of destructive power. When the surrounding collapsed, Feng Qi stood up in the ruins. The suction cup also pounced on him and reattached itself to his chest. After moving a few large rocks away, he found the warped secret door. He could not believe the weight of the secret door. He used all his strength to push it open. What appeared before him was a metal tunnel that led downwards. As he walked in, the sensor lights around him automatically lit up. After walking a few dozen meters, an underground plaza the size of sports field appeared before him. There were a few dozen iron doors around it. Above them were countless lights that formed a galaxy map. The center of the plaza was empty. There was no equipment like a database. However, there was an elevator at the end of the plaza. It seemed to go down another floor. I suspect that the blueprint used to build this underground plaza is the same as the one used in the Star City underground shelter. I agree. The structure here was slightly different, but it was very similar to the Star City underground shelter. Anticipating the truth, he walked towards the iron gates around the square. Fortunately, the iron doors here were not made of special materials from the outside world. He could break them open with a single blow with his mace. He walked into the first room. The sensor lights inside lit up. This room was about 500 square meters. There were nutrition chambers placed on both sides. There was still a green liquid in them that emitted an unpleasant smell. At the end of the room, there was an operating table with various types of surgical tools. Although they were old, these tools were not rusted. They were obviously made of special materials produced in the domain. During his observation, he also found that many of the incubation chambers were still soaking in the infant domain creatures. However, these infant domain creatures were already dead. The tubes that were connected to them were also old and disintegrated with a single touch. This was obviously a laboratory for researching domain creatures. After searching around, he left the room and went to the door of the next room. He once again used his mace to break open the door. This room was not big. However, it was filled with all kinds of paper documents. Many of the documents had already decayed. The words on them could not be seen clearly and would disintegrate with a single touch. However, there were also some paper documents made of special materials that were preserved. He was very puzzled about this. If there was an interconnected network that could permanently store information, why would they use paper documents to store it? Thinking of this, he could not help but be stunned. Was it to keep it a secret? Was the network not necessarily safe? If the Scarlet Institute was on the side of humans and knew that humans had been infiltrated by external forces, they would indeed use this method. Thinking of the high threshold to join the Scarlet Institute, which required various investigations and did not recruit any graduates, he felt that his guess might be correct. After picking up a document, he flipped to the first page and then chose to put it down. This document recorded the experimental data of biological science, and he couldn't understand it at all. While flipping through, a document caught his attention. The title of this document was The End of Human Evolution Concept. After flipping through the document, the content made him frown. Most of the content of this document came from speculation, but it revealed an important piece of information. At the end of human cultivation, a crystal would be born in the body. The structure of this crystal was very similar to that of a domain creature. So, as long as they continue to become stronger, a rune crystal will eventually be born in the body, just like a domain creature. I'm not sure. However, after the revival of spiritual energy, human evolution is actually the same as a domain creature. They both absorb spiritual energy to strengthen their bloodline. Therefore, this conclusion seems to be quite reliable. Hearing the answer from the narrator, Feng-Chi could not help but nod. However, when he turned to page 37, his expression instantly became sluggish. Domain creatures and humans were like two extremes. The end of the evolution of a domain creature was to melt a rune crystal, while humans were to produce a rune crystal. Perhaps this world was the same. There was a yang side, but there was also a yin side. Domain creatures might come from the yin side that we have yet to explore. That is the source of all disasters. Chapter 105. The unknown side of the world speculated in the information made Feng-Chi think of the heavenly path. Then, he thought of the mysterious disappearance of many powerhouses in history, which seemed to prove the existence of another world. Perhaps the origin of the domain creatures came from another world. Putting down the information, he continued to rummage through the information box, trying to find other useful information. But after searching for a while, he only found research materials related to biological science. After a fruitless search, he left the room and went to the next room. After that, he broke into 5 more rooms in a row. Most of these rooms stored experimental equipment and experimental data. There were no secrets of the Scarlet Institute that he wanted. As he continued to search, he came to a room that stored a lot of information. Here, he found information about the evaluation of special domain creatures. As he flipped through it, a picture caught his attention. The domain creature in the picture was Xiao-Hei, who was shrouded in black fog. Below the picture was a detailed explanation of Xiao-Hei. Black fog, special domain creature. Origin, first appeared in Future City. Suspected to be the source of Future City's destruction. Ability introduction. Able to freely reassemble its body. It has a near-immortal body. No matter how serious the injury, it can heal in an instant. After switching to its atomized form, the black fog has an extremely strong devouring ability. It can devour all materials with energy to replenish its own consumption. Strength rating. Een Fiend, level 4. Weakness. Not discovered yet characteristics. Attacks all life in sight, including domain creatures. Origin speculation. The Black Fog's life form is different from all the domain creatures recorded in the current database. We have to guess that the Black Fog is most likely a special life form that was created just like by Tong. When he saw the last sentence of the information, Feng-Chi's pupils suddenly shrank. This content revealed a lot of information. First of all, it confirmed his previous guess. The sucker was created, and it was very likely that it was born in the Scarlet Institute. Then, he thought of the picture taken by M.O. Fei, where the sucker was in contact with Vivian. It was very likely that she was created and nurtured by Vivian herself. Therefore, the sucker's ability was very similar to Mu Qing's. It was completely explainable, because she was Mu Qing's clone. At the same time, this sentence also revealed an important piece of information. Xiao-Hei was most likely created. Regardless of whether Xiao-Hei was created or not, it doesn't answer one question. Why is Xiao-Hei after you? Hearing the narrator's words, he couldn't help but nod. When Xiao-Hei was created, he had been dead for an unknown number of years. Therefore, Xiao-Hei was able to accurately pinpoint his location and persistently pursue him. There was obviously a big secret behind this. At the same time, a question surfaced in his mind. Other than the Scarlet Institute, was there any other organization that could create life? For the time being, he had no way of knowing the answer to these questions. He decided to investigate the Scarlet Bed next time. Perhaps Vivian, who had lived for more than 500 years, would be able to answer many of his questions. He put down the information in his hand and prepared to leave the room to continue his exploration. At this moment, the voice of the narrator sounded in his mind. Danger warning, an extremely dangerous creature is approaching. Do you wish to abandon the absorption armor to save your life? Hearing the narrator's warning, he turned his head and saw Xiao-Hei's figure floating quickly from afar. Looking at the suction cup in his arms, Feng-Chi sighed helplessly. Suction cup, I'm sorry. Next time I come back to avenge you, help me block it. If I were a sucker, I would devour my master on the spot. I would jump up and punch you in the head. I don't want such a master. Next time, next time, I'm about to develop feelings for Little Black. Feng Chi was speechless. He picked up the suction cup and threw it out without hesitation when Xiaohei approached. When a suction cup made contact with the black mist, she suddenly opened her eyes. Starlight appeared in her eyes and turned into a spinning galaxy. And she turned around and punched the black mist. The terrifying power instantly penetrated the black mist. However, the black mist also healed in a very short period of time and quickly spread to the surface of the suction cup. The battle between the suction cup and Xiaohei began again. The suction cup obviously had the upper hand at first. Her body was as agile as a rabbit as she constantly shuttled through the black mist while jumping and throwing punches. After looking at the suction cup again, he turned around and walked towards the elevator in the plaza. He decided to go to the basement 2 of the Scarlet Institute's underground base to take a look. Maybe there would be more information he wanted there. He walked in front of the elevator and pressed the inverted triangle button next to it. Then, a green light appeared at the entrance of the elevator and quickly scanned his body. Then, a mechanical voice sounded. Identity verification failed. Unauthorized entry. While feeling helpless, he immediately raised his mace and slammed it on the elevator. What he didn't expect was that this attack didn't leave a single mark on the elevator. Instead, it made his hand go numb. When he realized that the metal door outside the elevator was made of the same material as the hidden door, his face showed some helplessness. But at least it proved that there was something important on the next floor. Otherwise, the Scarlet Institute wouldn't have such tight security. He turned around and looked at the suction cup that was fighting with Xiaohei. He decided to leave first. If he continued to stay here, he might be affected by the battle between Xiaohei and the suction cup and accidentally die a horrible death. He took a detour and came to the entrance of the metal tunnel. He looked back again and then walked into the tunnel without hesitation. A moment later, his figure appeared in the abandoned hospital. The walls around him had collapsed. He walked straight through the ruins and came outside. Next, he decided to go back to the Star City Sanctuary and read up on the learning materials to prepare himself for the future. If there was a chance along the way, he could also try to kill domain creatures to increase his strength. Without the protection of the suction cup, he didn't feel safe walking in the abandoned city. He always felt that a domain creature would jump out at any time and ambush him. So his mind was always on edge. He walked along the ruined street and came to the place where he killed the gorilla-like domain creature. He looked up and was surprised to see a scarlet eye lying on the dead domain creature's head. At this time, the center of the eye split open, revealing a mouth full of sharp teeth. It was eating the body of the dead domain creature. While it was eating, the tentacles around the scarlet eye twisted and swayed. Together with the blood moon in the distance and the dim scene, the scene was quite horrifying. Don't you like to attack from afar? If you can use your brain, then don't use your hands? Now, the opportunity to obtain psychokinesis is right in front of your door. Kill it. Hearing the slightly sarcastic words of the narrator, Feng Chi raised his middle finger in his mind. What to do? Use a mace? He had personally experienced the strength of the Scarlet Eye. It could use psychokinesis to control objects near it. It could also use psychokinesis to wrap around its target and crush it to death. With his current strength, rushing forward was no different from suicide. Even if he activated his blood origin ability, he was not confident that he could beat the Scarlet Eye. The best plan now was to leave. Thinking of this, he decisively prepared to escape. But at this time, a loud noise came from the front. The debris of the building that was piled up near the dead domain creature suddenly exploded. A humanoid figure with flames all over its body appeared from within and then pounced toward the Scarlet Eye. The moment the flames were about to touch the Scarlet Eye, scarlet ripples appeared around the Scarlet Eye. The gravel around trembled. In an instant, the figure that was enveloped in flames was trapped in the air about 2 meters away from the Scarlet Eye. At this time, the air was buzzing. The flaming figure was instantly pushed away and landed heavily on the ground. The Scarlet Eye also gave up on the prey under it. It slowly floated in the air and maintained a safe distance from the flaming figure. The flaming figure that was bound by psychokinesis struggled hard at this moment. A twisted and ferocious expression appeared in the flames. However, the scarlet, I did not give it a chance. As psychokinesis exploded again, the flaming figure's body was torn apart by psychokinesis and began to tear into pieces. Seeing the Scarlet Eye's ability, Feng-Chi was envious. Relying on psychokinesis, it could easily fly in the air and bind and attack prey with just a thought. It was practically an omnipotent special ability. If he could obtain psychokinesis, it would be much more convenient for him to travel in the future. It could also make up for his lack of long-range combat. What's wrong with being a muscular man? Isn't it fun to tear the enemy apart with your bare hands and punch their flesh like a real man? Listen to my advice. Let's walk the path of a strong man. We don't care about psychokinesis and elemental spells. We don't want it even if it's given to us. Feng-Chi was speechless. This is called developing in all aspects. Stupid idea. When your muscles are at their peak, violence can destroy all monsters and monsters. There's nothing you can't deal with one punch. If there is, then 2 punches. What if I encounter an agile enemy, or an enemy like Xiao He who has no effect on physical attacks? That only proves that your muscles are not strong enough. As long as your fist is strong enough, with 1 punch, even molecules can be turned into atoms. The peak of physical damage can be accompanied by magical damage. After listening to the narration, Feng-Chi could not help but roll his eyes. Then, he turned his head to look at the Scarlet Eye. At this time, the figure shrouded in flames had been torn apart by psychokinesis. It turned into several fireballs that fell to the ground and continued to burn. He had thought that the figure shrouded in flames should be quite strong. Otherwise, he would not have dared to provoke the Scarlet Eye. He did not expect it to be so weak that it was killed as soon as they started fighting. Just when Feng-Chi thought that the battle was over and was about to leave, the flames that were scattered on the ground suddenly jumped up and rushed toward the Scarlet Eye. The Scarlet Eye was obviously not prepared for this. Although it used psychokinesis to stop the approaching fireballs in time, it was still burned by the high temperature at close range. It let out a sharp screech. Blood bubbles appeared at the places that were licked by the flames. Blood flowed out after bursting. The high temperature dehydrated the Scarlet Eye in a short period of time. Wrinkles appeared on the surface of its body. The Scarlet Eye that was ambushed was furious. It activated its psychokinesis again. Suddenly, all the fireballs were torn apart crazily, turning into countless sparks that fell to the ground and gradually extinguished. However, the Scarlet Eye did not have it easy either. It slowly fell to the ground, and the tentacles on the surface of its body no longer twisted and swayed. It seemed to have entered a special state of hibernation. Seeing this, Feng-Chi, who was about to leave, could not help but look down at the mace in his hand. Narration: can I do this or not? From the point of view of pure muscle, you can't do it. If you kill it, you will be tainted by magical talent and will no longer be pure. I advise you to think twice.